A quorum, and we can take roll call and get started.
Bill, you got me?
Yeah, I got you.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. They say that the road to somewhere warm is paved with good intentions, and I thought we were going to split up the docket between this week and next week, so we wouldn't have to have, and our goal is not to have a meeting such that we have to waive readings. So this week and next week are the planned last meetings before the crossover. I had a request for a number of bills to go by for the week. So 230 is going to go by for the week. 543 will go by for the week. 565 will go by for the week.
Start again.
Okay.
Start again.
230, 543, 565. Now, 346, the patron asked me to go by. The advocates have wanted it to be heard, and I don't know whether I don't think there's been anything to override the patron's desire, so the bill will go by for the day. The goal, we're also going to stop at 5 o'clock, so we've got a hard stop. We're going to do the best we can to get through these bills. 361, Van Valkenburg I need a motion to re-refer that bill to General Laws and Technology. Got a motion and a second to re-refer 361 to General Laws. Is that a recorded vote? Yes, sir. Please open the roll.
Ayes 11, no 0.
Okay, and then I need a motion to refer 409 Boyce Code to local government.
Is that a cleanup bill? Is that a cleanup bill? 409? Come on. It's too easy.
We've got a motion and a second to refer 409 to local government. Open the roll, please.
Ayes 11, no 0.
Okay, on the sign-up sheet, that bill's referred. Van Valkenburg is the first name on the list. Do you have another bill? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is Senate Bill 313.
Senate Bill 313, turn your attention to Senator Van Valkenburg.
All right, so members of the committee, this is about consumer protection for residential solar. And so the bill before you does two things. First, it directs the Commissioner of EDAX to create a mandatory disclosure form that will be included in marketing materials that promote the sale, lease, or installation of any solar energy facility. This language is modeled along the lines of the South Carolina version, and I'll give this so you guys can look at it if you'd like. This is what South Carolina's disclosure form looks like. The second thing it'll do is it will create a work group to see if there's anything else we need to do moving forward. Actually, there's a substitute we need to move.
There's a substitute for the bill. Is there a motion to adopt the substitute? Okay. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor of the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the substitute's properly before the committee. It's just a front and back bill, it looks like.
So residential solar is a relatively new industry, and there's lots of good actors in this space, but there's some bad actors. Had some folks' roofs set on fire in my district because of bad solar. A disclosure form will help the consumer. The work group will help us kind of move forward. This is kind of a first step in making sure that the folks that are in this field are doing right by our citizens. The form has a number of components, a description of the equipment, the total cost to be paid, any guarantee by the seller of the energy production output that the equipment will provide, any tax credits or rebates the seller claims are available.
Is there any substantial change from the
It's the same basic concept. No, it's the same.
Senator Servell's got something.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and sorry, thanks for this bill. I think I had some dialogue with you about some other versions of this. In the event that the department adopts these regs, how are they enforced? Because the Attorney General doesn't really have the resources to enforce, individual solar cases. Commonwealth attorneys don't get involved in it. So,
So that's a good question, Mr. Chair, Senator Servo. I'd say there's a competing version in the House that's coming through, and we're kind of trying to figure out what the best version of that would be. Certainly, if you would like to put something in there in this moment, I
have an
don't
amendment, Senator
take
Servo.
umbrage at that.
No, this is, Mr. Chairman, this is a Section 1 bill, so it's not, there's not any code language in it, so it would require I maybe can deal with it before it goes to the floor. I'll think about that. We can add something to the Virginia Consumer Protection Act saying that a violation of these regs would be a violation of the VCPA or something. I'll noodle it through.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would say to that on top of this is just to get the ball rolling, and this is to start the process with disclosure, but then also that part of that work group is what do we need to do as this field gets bigger and bigger. So I'll just throw that out there. I mean, it's a policy choice of the committee if you want to add that component to it, but I will note that.
Are there other questions for Senator Van Valkenburg? Are there people in the audience who want to be heard on this issue? 5 minutes aside, if people that are for the bill come forward first.
Those online who wish to speak to this bill, please raise your hand now.
Sure. Come on up.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. Aaron Such, Solar United Neighbors. We are a nonprofit organization that represents consumers of solar and prospective solar owners. We support this bill. We believe that it makes some progress on basic disclosures to make the sale of solar energy to residential facilities more transparent. We also believe it balances the interests of good acting installers with those protections of consumers. And then lastly, a stakeholder group is a good opportunity for additional recommendations to get the industry together and essentially get smart people and relevant interests in the room so that we can move the ball forward. We appreciate the patronage of Senator Van Valkenburg. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Greg Abbe from Gentry Lock here on behalf of the Solar Energy Industries Association. We don't have a position on the specific bill as it's drafted, but I did want to address what Senator Servo raised. It was our hope that we would put this work group together, study the issue, and then maybe come back if there was the need to put any enforcement mechanisms in place. I think it would change the industry's position on the legislation if we did that on the fly here. But we do appreciate the efforts being done within the industry to make sure that everybody is a good actor and hold bad actors accountable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club, we support the bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We support the bill. We think these disclosures will help out residential customers and keep them from getting hit with surprises along the process. Thank you to Senator Van Valkenburg for his leadership on the issue.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Sabinian Energy, and for the reasons previously stated, we also support the bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Jacob Newton with Virginia Electric Cooperatives. Anything to be transparent and protect our members on this front, we're going to be supportive of, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, just to make sure, I was trying to listen to your exchange with Senator Serval. In Section 1, there's no, if somebody doesn't do it after the commissioner promulgates regulations, there's no penalty.
So this was to get the ball rolling, to get the disclosure process up and running, to get that work group to think about what the next steps are as needed as this kind of field gets bigger.
Okay, the bill's before the committee. If it's reported, it's got to go to finance. Okay. Got a motion and a second. Are there other motions? Please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zeros. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The bill reports. Okay. Senator Aird.
Mr. Chair, I have two, and I'm hoping we can start with Senate Bill 480.
480?
Yes.
Okay, Senate Bill 480. Turn your attention to Senator Aird.
And there is a substitute, Mr. Chair, that I'd ask be presented to you all, and I'd like to explain the substitute with my overview of the bill.
Okay, been motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Okay, the substitute's before you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Again, Senate Bill 480 is a bill to codify our recommendations that were developed during a 2022 SEC study to explore the ways in which to protect residential utility customers from losing essential access to power, water, and gas during high-risk periods. The legislation provides that high-risk periods include extreme temperature, extremes during which disconnection should be prevented. For electricity, that would be temperature forecast within the next 24 hours of 92 degrees or higher, or 32 degrees or lower. And for gas, we just use the 32 degrees or lower threshold. And for water, we just use the 92 degrees or higher threshold. The legislation also automatically prohibits disconnections for 30 days when there is a state of emergency declared by the governor in response to communicable diseases threat. And any extension beyond 30 days would be up to the SEC or the legislature. It also prevents disconnections on or before non-business days. In addition, the prohibitions on the disconnections, the legislation requires utilities make their disconnection policies publicly available and notify customers ahead of any pending disconnection. And lastly, the bill directs a study coordinated between SEWR and the SEC and the Commission on Local Government to establish formal recommendations for utility data reporting. And ultimately, Mr. Chair, Virginia is one of only 7 states without shutoff protections during extreme weather conditions. Currently, there are no laws to prevent utilities from disconnecting water, gas, or electricity on the even hottest and coldest days of the year. And so we're hoping to put this framework into practice moving forward.
Okay, I understand that this has to extreme weather events and states of emergency, and the State Corporation Commission has found that most utilities are in compliance with this already. Is that correct?
We make some technical specifications, but yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Are any questions for Senator Aird? Okay, people that are for or against, we're going to 5 minutes each. Okay, people that are for.
Those online who wish to speak to this bill, please raise your hand
Was anybody
now.
opposed to this bill?
Anybody?
Anybody opposed to this?
Move to report.
Okay. Got a motion and a second to report the
I like
bill.
that.
Are there other, and refer to finance.
Amen.
Are there further motions? If not, please open the roll.
Sorry. Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. Your bill's gone to finance. Okay. Your second bill is 494.
Senate Bill 494.
Okay. Turn your attention to Senator Aird.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 494 would allow domestic service workers living and working in a household to be paid overtime. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, under current law, Virginia's domestic workers are excluded from fundamental labor rights such as minimum wage protections, protections against harassment and discrimination, and adherence to workplace safety. And so domestic workers encompassing roles such as nannies, housekeepers, home health care workers, we're looking to provide them with this additional protection of overtime pay. During the pandemic, domestic workers were dedicated to providing essential care and often worked over 40 hours a week while facing their own significant hardships. And so we're hoping that we can take a look at this and allow them to be considered for overtime pay also.
Okay. Are there questions for Senator Aird? There are people here in favor and against. Is that? Or in favor at least. Are there people against? Let's hear from the people that are in favor of the bill first.
Those online who wish to speak to this bill, please raise your hand now.
Okay, 5 minutes, please, for all of you.
Hello, my name is Monica Sarmiento, and I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights. The coalition and its 45 organizations has endorsed this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Good afternoon, members of committee. My name is Linda Mamani. I am a domestic worker who has had a simultaneously be a cook, teacher, chef, nurse, and much more, and you can name it. Many of say I'm a superwoman. However it is, it has come and at the expense of my sacrifice, my health. The hard part of this is that when I was sick, I was unavailable to see a doctor. I could not be there for my loved ones, as a mom, as a wife, as a friend. To be human is to believe in our condition will improve, which is why I'm here today. We deserve not just the right to fair wage, but also extra pay for overtime we work. Modern slavery is how my job makes me feel. I was working 10, 15 hours or more without payment, the overtime payment. I urge to pass SB 494. Passing SB 494 means better condition as the right to fair pay for my hard work and overtime dedication. It is a work I love. My presence here stands in the name of my ancestors, such as Dorothy Baldwin, who in 1968 fought for minimum wage and improved working conditions in the U.S. Now, 55 years later, we continue the fight for rights we deserve. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Sheila Herlihy with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. I just want to lift up that personal story and acknowledge that we support this bill. Thank you.
Dr. Emily Yen, Virginia Education Association. We strongly support this bill. When the Fair Labor Standards Act was originally passed, over 90% of African American female workers were worked as domestics and were not protected under overtime protections. Over 80 years later, we are grappling with this very issue about overtime for domestic workers. And I think that this is long, long overdue. So I strongly urge you to support SB 494. Thank you.
Hello, Jill Gatlin, Karen Action. I'm the Virginia Organizing Manager, and we are here to say we absolutely support SB 494. We ask that you all include live-in domestic workers. They deserve to have protection. They deserve to have fair wages. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Freddie Mejia, I'm Policy Director at the Commonwealth Institute, and we support the bill, and we ask that you do as well. Thank you.
He's talking right now. No, he's busy right now. I know.
Are there those who have another point of view that would like to be heard? Senator Peake.
Just a question, Senator Aird or one of the guests, how many live-in domestic workers do we think there are in the Commonwealth? Does anybody know?
Let's see if I have it in my notes, Senator Peake. Mr. Chair and Senator Peake, I believe there are about 60,000 individuals that contribute to the essential workforce, but specifically that are live-in domestic workers. I don't have that number before me.
So we're only talking about live-in domestic workers.
Correct.
Did you have other questions, Senator Peake? Senator Morrison.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Aird, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure this is covered in another part of the code, but I was just curious. I'm certainly in favor of the bill, but is room and board considered part of the compensation, and how does that calculation work when it's part of the compensation to determine what time and a half is?
I would ask counsel if they have further information, if that's defined in the code somewhere.
I'm sorry?
It's not defined in the code, Senator Marsden.
Well, the bill's before the committee. While we got a letter last week that it had to go to finance, this week the letter came and it didn't include this bill, so I don't know. I guess if it gets to the floor and Madam Chair wants it, we can, do you want it?
I do.
Okay, the motion, if it's appropriate to report the bill, to be report and refer to finance. Got a motion and a second to report and re-refer to
Mr.
finance.
Chairman, can I just ask a quick question?
Senator Servell.
So, in my family and many others, I know people have au pairs, and there are rules around au pairs. I can't remember what they were, but there was some agreement we had to sign. And au pairs don't get paid an hourly rate. They get, I think we had to pay like a monthly stipend and pay for a community college class or something like that, and their compensation was considered to be part of the room and the board and all that stuff. They got paid, and so, but we were only allowed to have them work a certain amount per week. How does that all play into this? Because this seems to, I think, assume a domestic household worker is being paid by the hour, but I'm not sure all of them are actually paid by the hour.
Mr. Chair, Senator Servell, certainly to make it clear, we could make a statement in the language to specify that au pairs would not be affected. Certainly the intent is not to include them.
Okay, I'm not even sure I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. So I don't know if that's defined in the code or whatever. I'm going to need to figure it out this second, and it's going to finance, so I can go poke around in the meantime, so.
See, till you start messing with Senator Servell's bottom line.
I think this is payback, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor, please open the roll.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
I thank the committee.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Now we have Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I have, did you say move to report? Is that what you said? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Stanley.
And we've already passed by for the day, Senate Bill 230.
Yes, we're passing that one by for the day.
Okay.
And then I have two other bills, SB 234.
SB 234, you turn your attention to Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 234 is a pilot program to help us in the Commonwealth think about alternative uses to develop our solar programs, our solar energy program, rather than using very, very priceless agricultural land. The goal is to begin to use opportunities that are available to us for other solar projects. And specifically, this bill focuses on parking lot solar development. And it's a pilot program to see how effective and meaningful that might be. The goal is to focus on two localities. Surprisingly, it's Chesterfield County and Richmond City. But as we all know, there's just a heavy increase of electric demands that are really causing many, many challenges for us.
Senator Hashmi, staff has a couple of technical amendments. I'm not sure you know about them.
I'm not aware of the technical amendments. Okay.
Okay, if staff would report those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hashmi, on line 27, after GATS means the strike general and insert generation. So that would read GATS means the generation attribute tracking system. Then on line 52, it says the Commission and the Department of Energy. That should say the Department of Energy. And then on line 102, it says the House Committee on Commerce and Energy, and that should be Labor and Commerce.
Okay, there's a motion and a second, I guess. Is there a second on that? Second. Okay, a motion and a second to adopt these technical amendments. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. the bill's been amended, and I think those amendments are pretty technical. Don't you agree?
I would agree, yes. Thank you. Thank you for those amendments. And so just to reiterate, this is really an effort to focus our opportunity on developing more solar energy, but not using our prime agricultural land and our forest. So with this, we have less impact on our environment, but we also result in clean air and fewer health impacts. The building solar on parking lots is going to use land that's already been impacted by the parking lot itself and is already accounted for under existing stormwater management plans, and so that means there are no other mitigation efforts that would be needed. This would establish a fund so that the Department of Energy, in consultation with our DEQ, can establish a program to encourage the development of distributed parking lot solar projects up to 1 megawatt in Virginia. And again, as I said, this is a project, a pilot that begins first in Chesterfield County and in Richmond City, with the hope that with its success, it would be used in other localities.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Senator Hashmi, this fund, who's paying into it, and are the payments voluntary?
We have put in a budget amendment a request for that, and we would also need to include the budget request or increase the budget request. The fiscal statement that we got back indicates that Department of Energy will need a staff member assigned for the fund, and that there would be increased cost to set up the commission as well to review the work of this program.
Mr. Chair, Senator Hash, the whole fund is being funded by whatever's in the budget. We're not forcing companies to participate and pay into this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Peake. This is a voluntary program so that no one is being coerced or forced into this. And the reason that we really need to incentivize it is that non-centralized solar projects really do cost a little bit more money. So 50 to 100% cost more than it would to take utility solar to scale. And so there are very few incentives for companies, localities, businesses to engage in this work. This would help to incentivize that work and show a return on investment in the process.
Senator McDougall has a question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at line 63 through 66, and it talks about setting a fixed price for these renewable credits. Who sets the fixed price, and is there a limit on how much they can be?
Let me see. I believe the price would be set by the Department of Energy. Mr. Chair and Senator McDougall, I believe that would be the Department of Energy would do that.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougall.
So the other part of the question is there a limit on how high they can be? Because the way this looks, they are required to be purchased.
Mr. Chair and Senator McDougall, I don't have the answer, but I know we have a gentleman here who would have the answer to that question.
We phoned a friend.
Good afternoon, Chairman Deeds and committee. I'll speak to that.
Identify yourself, please, first.
Oh, sorry. My name is Ashish Kapoor from Piedmont Environmental Council, and the purpose of the stakeholder committee will be to develop that levelized incentive over 10 years. If it's not sold, then there's an alternative auction in which a base level for the SREC will be set. Ultimately, it's really just to close the gap between this form of energy and utility scale. So it'll be just closing that gap and nothing further.
Mr. Chairman, but is there a requirement that the fixed price be limited to that gap, and doesn't that get passed on to all other rate players?
No, so that that difference would just close the gap so that developers can get funding for their projects from banks. Typically a developer gets 90% of their funding from a bank, so they can show what that levelized incentive is. That's paid for by the fund.
Mr. Chairman, what it looks like to me those lines say is that there's a set price established. Utilities have to purchase at that set price. So how does that not get passed on to the ratepayers if they have to make that purchase, other ratepayers that are not producing the solar?
So the fund would pay for that differential in amount. That would not be passed on to the utility. Then if it's not sold within that, in that space, then that second sort of alternative auction would set the base value as a lower value. So
Those online who wish to speak to this bill, please raise your hand now.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We support this bill. We think it's a good way to incentivize these projects on already disturbed lands as opposed to impacting important natural resources. We think the stakeholder process is a good forum to come up with that incentive and to involve stakeholders from the ratepayer community, from the environmental community, from industry, to really work to get that incentive correct. So we'd ask you to support this bill.
The questions that Senator McDougal raised, I mean, a cost that has not really been approved by the State Corporation Commission would effectively be passed on to the consumer, wouldn't it?
For projects that are built under the program and
Yeah.
that the utility purchases the RECs for, those costs would go to the ratepayer.
They would be passed on to the ratepayer. And I guess we'd see how it's going to work if we're doing the pilot project.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougal.
So I read that to mean the utility must purchase those RECs. Is that not your reading of it? Like it's not an option, they have to?
No, sir, because of the alternative auction site that's there, and I think Ashish can speak a little bit more to that, but it's not a mandatory purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Lillian Anderson. I'm representing Virginia Conservation Network. We're the partnership of over 160 environmental organizations across the Commonwealth, and we support this bill.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next.
Walton Shepard with the NRDC. We think this is a great way for parking lots to pull double duty. And on the rec question, this is great because it creates more recs, which should drive the overall cost of recs down over the long term.
Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Blair St. Ledger Olson with Climate Cabinet Action. This is really sound policy, so we would ask you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kyle Shreve on behalf of the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. We do support the bill as we are concerned about the solar development on ag and forest land. This bill helps incentivize it on areas that are not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Brad Copenhaver representing the Virginia Agribusiness Council. Similar reasons to the Farm Bureau, we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Chris Lane, Virginia League of Conservation Voters. For the reasons already expressed, we support this bill. This puts solar where all of us agree that it should go, and we'd like to see this passed.
Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Jim Riddell with the Virginia Cattlemen's Association. We thank the senator for bringing this bill. It helps to mitigate the losses that we're seeing on farm and forest land in Virginia. So thank you. We support the bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy. While we have shared some concerns we have with the bill, we would be supportive of it continuing through the process so we can hopefully help resolve some of the questions you've heard today. And additionally, I'll add one more to that, and that is on line 84. It also guarantees that the solar project owner gets to achieve their target economic rate of return. So those are the types of questions we would hope that would get worked out as it moves through the process. Thank you.
Catherine, what about the issues raised by Senator McDougal? Are those valid issues, or?
As I read it, there is no limit to how much those could be, how those could be priced, or to the extent that they could be levied on other customers. I do read it that we would need to purchase those, and it allows the department to set a fixed price.
You read it that you the incumbent supplier would have to purchase those.
Mr. Chair, that's how I read the bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Ms. Bond, if we switch that shall to may on line 70, would that let y'all purchase them but not require that they be purchased?
69.
69.
Into 69.
Mr. Chair, I would say that that might resolve a question related to that particular provision, leaving a few other questions on other provisions remaining.
Senator Steff has a question.
Mr. Chair, I understand where Senator McDougal's going, but if you look at line 84, it still says that the Dominion still has to meet their target economic rate, so their economic rate of return. So Dominion would not only have to buy it, but they'd have to make sure that whatever their target profit rate of that solar provider is, they would have to make sure that they met that profitability rate, which
the solar project owner is the one that has to be able to achieve their rate. You're right about that.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's why I wonder if the bill's going forward, it's got to go to the finance committee, and a better place to work out a more holistic solution to this might be up there.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should, or
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to amend shall to may on line 69, so at least we start that part of the conversation here.
Second.
Okay, Senator Hashmi, do you want to be heard on that?
As we've heard, we're still working through some of the details of the bill, and I would ask that if we can leave the bill as it is so that we can work out some of these issues prior to the Finance Committee. But we are certainly in conversation with Dominion and other folks.
Well, you've got the amendment, so you understand the amendment, though, which has been moved and seconded on line 69 after a company changed shall to may. All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. I think the ayes have it. And maybe the apathy is what really won there. I don't know.
Carried the day.
I think the amendment passed. As I said, are there people that are opposed to this bill? But then the motion would be to report and re-refer to finance. Okay.
Mr. Chairman? So,
Senator McDougal.
I appreciate the efforts of the committee to put the amendment on, so I am going to vote for it at this time, but I do hope that we continue to have a conversation, because I don't want there to be a policy from the legislature that if somebody puts a rate of return out that they can't achieve in the market, then that we're going to be picking it up on the ratepayers at another time. So I hope that we can resolve that portion as it goes forward.
Okay, the motion is still to report and re-refer to finance. If there are not other motions, please open the roll.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Okay, your bill reports and re-refers to finance. Do you have another bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, SB 276. SB 276 is inclusive utility investing. There is a substitute also that we'd like to offer the committee.
Okay, we've got a substitute. Is there a motion to adopt it? Motion to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Okay, opposed? The substitute's before the committee. Okay, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The substitute is different from the introduced bill in that it really is seeking to establish a work group to study the feasibility of the implementation of energy upgrade program for eligible customers. We talked to a variety of stakeholders, who asked us to, rather than proceed with the introduced legislation, to move it to a SEC work group so that we can evaluate the feasibility of eligible customers opting in to participate with expanded inclusive utilities. So this work group will focus on the feasibility of installing one or more energy projects at a participant's location, collecting a special rate from the participant to repay the cost of the installation, and seeing what options might be available to our customers. So again, it's an effort to address the issues of energy and energy usage, and expanding the opportunities for customers to use diverse methods for successfully bringing their costs down, as well as addressing environmental issues that we face. So this is a work group that would be under SCC to study the feasibility of this program.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure that we understand that this is now a Section 1 bill study looking at this, because my concern on the base bill, and I'm going through here and it's still in this, is that this shifts the requirement, so the energy company would have to invest all upfront capital, but it switches the risk, and it would have to be paid by the ratepayers in the end. I still see this where the ratepayers are going to assume all the risk. That's just my concern with the way we're going on this one, Mr. Chair.
The way I read it, Senator Steph, it's now become a Section 1 bill that just creates a work group to take a look at whether you're going to have energy upgrades for eligible customers. Does anybody have any questions for Senator Hashmi?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougal.
The lines 15 and 16, the SEC is supposed to come back with a determination whether implementation of such program is feasible under the terms provided in this act. I could understand if they're supposed to come back and say the program is going to do this or that, but what are the terms of this act that it's feasible? I realize we just got this, so I might not have.
Sure, Mr. Chair. And
is that rate of return? Is that what that means?
I assumed that meant the definitions contained in Section B, but I may be mistaken, and I would prefer for Senator Hashmi to address that.
Mr. Chair and Senator McDougal, you're exactly right, Mr. Chair, that the act is in terms of assessing whether or not the eligible customers can participate in this program, and what the energy projects would offer and deliver. So that is the reference in that particular, under those particular lines.
Are there other questions for Senator Hashmi? Okay, are there people against this bill? You want to tell us briefly why you think we need this? Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. This is a program, these energy upgrade programs, it's similar to on-bill financing, and so the utility would put the upfront cost for the investment, whether that's residential solar, storage, or energy efficiency, and then the savings that those projects generate are what's used to pay back that initial investment plus a rate of return. So we're asking the SEC to have a stakeholder process to explore that program, and then report back to the committees and SEWR as noted in the bill. We would ask that you support the bill, and thank you to Senator Hashmi for her leadership on the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, whether it's energy efficiency on the front end or whether it's rooftop solar on the back end, we know that we need better carrots to support these two very popular ways to deal with our energy demand. This would explore that, and we urge support of this bill. I'm Chris Lane, Policy Director for Virginia League of Conservation Voters.
Hello, Chairman Deeds and committee. Piedmont Environmental Council, Ashish Kapoor. We're in support of this. Rooftop solar lessens the impact on our agricultural lands and on our forests. This is another way for folks that can often not afford to take out a loan for rooftop solar to finance it through their utility bill, and thus enhances the equity of rooftop solar. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Morris, Appalachian Power. The original form of the bill would, in essence, have utilities serve as a bank to finance these projects, and so we appreciate very much the stakeholders and the patron for listening to our concerns, having a study to kind of determine the operative word in the substitute is the feasibility of such a program.
Okay, you wouldn't necessarily have been for the bill, but you don't think a work group is such a bad thing?
We do not, and we'll be able to speak our concerns in that work group.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Walter Chepp with the NRDC. We're confident the work group will lead to more ways to lower the increased demand that we're all concerned about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, again, I'm with Virginia Conservation Network, and we support this bill.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We're supportive of a work group because there are consumer concerns that we always want to put in front of any kind of venue where there would be financing of anything. So we just want to make sure that consumer concerns are heard and are integrated into the process. So we're very thankful that it's a work group. Thank you.
Ms. Bond, or you have the same view or a different one?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy, and we also support the bill, and with gratitude to the patron and the advocates for working to address our concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator DeSteph.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, I'm happy to have either Appalachian or Dominion try to help me understand this, or even have our staff attorney. But on line 14, we say the commission shall issue a determination of whether the implementation of such program is feasible under the terms provided in this act. Then we go to the next page, and on line 28, we say that the utility in which the utility installs energy projects at the participant's location and collects a special rate from such participant to repay the cost of such installation. So we're actually saying that we don't really want to study, we're dictating what the outcome is of the study, the way I read it, and I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I'm reading this.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Hashmi, do you want to respond to
yes,
that?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Senator DeStep. This substitute was written with our partners from APCO and Dominion, and this is the language that we've all agreed to. But I'm happy to let them speak.
Ms. Bond.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I would respond to Senator DeStef's question. The way that I read this is that the special rate is actually collected from that customer, not necessarily from all customers. And that's the logistics of exactly how that prices out and what they are paying for, and if they are fully paying back that investment of the infrastructure that was installed on their premises is part of what the work group is designed to determine.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? The bill's before the committee. Got a motion and a second to report the bill. Are there other motions? Open the roll, please.
Ayes 13, noes 1, 1 abstention.
Okay, congratulations, Senator Hashmi. Senator Sturdivant's next.
Thank you.
185, is that the only bill you've got?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Senate Bill 185.
Bill 185, I've got a amendment in the nature of a substitute, Mr. Chairman. The original bill.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Senate Bill 185 in substitute form is before you. Turn your attention to Senator Sturdivant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The original bill applied to all private employers. This has been scaled back to just employers that have 100 or more employees. And it's bringing Virginia in line with what we do for state agencies. It's bringing in line what our sister states do with regard to requiring E-Verify for employment in Virginia. It's been the law of the Commonwealth for over 10 years that all state agencies have to use E-Verify for new employees, and also contractors and subcontractors of the Commonwealth that have contracts of $50,000 or more and have 50 or more employees have to use the E-Verify system to confirm their employees are authorized to work in Virginia and the United States. Our sister states to the south have actually much more stringent requirements here. In North Carolina, it's all employers who have 25 or more employees. South Carolina, it's all private employers. Tennessee, it's 50 or more employees. In Georgia, it's 10 or more. And so what this would do is again, bring us closer in line with what those other states are doing, and the purpose of which is it's a policy we have at the state level and have had for many years, and it's worked well. But the policy reasons are a couple. Number one is to help reduce the instances of fraud and identity theft, but also it's to help make sure that we are maintaining wages for our employees, because when we have unauthorized labor in the Commonwealth, that can help to contribute to driving down the wages for authorized employees. And so this has been a system that's been around for many years. It's one that's worked well in the Commonwealth for state agencies, for contractors and subcontractors in the private sector that do business with the Commonwealth. And it's something that our federal contractors and subcontractors already do as well.
Okay, is it correct to say that the only difference between the substitute and the bill that we all read is that the substitute is limited to employers of at least 100 people?
Correct, and the original bill had a provision about the Attorney General keeping a list of all the employers who were using E-Verify. We took that out as well.
Okay, Senator Surville's got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. So, Senator, I remember when we adopted this, it was like one of the first big floor fights I saw in the House of Delegates back in 2010. And the current law today only applies to, what is it, state agencies, I think, right?
It's Mr. Chairman, Senator Surville, there's one code section that requires all state agencies to use E-Verify. There's a separate code section that requires private sector contractors with 50 or more employees and that have a contract with the state of $50,000 or more to use E-Verify.
Further question, Mr. Chairman. My recollection, and it's been 14 years since I had participated in that floor debate, is that E-Verify is full of all kinds of problems and that it mixes people up all the time and falsely accuses people of not being documented. And I just remember there being a whole bunch of concern about the accuracy of the database. Would you agree that that concern continues to exist?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Surville, what I would say is that the progress over the last 15 or so years of that being the policy of the Commonwealth, as well as other states expanding its use in both the public and private sector, indicates that I think some of those concerns, while well-intentioned, have not worked out in practice to be totally founded. And so, again, all of our federal contractors in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads and around the state, they already all have to go through this process, and all of those who contract with the Commonwealth already have to go through this process. And the Senator will correct me, but I don't think there's been any efforts to unwind this or to reduce it as a result of those problems that were raised, potential problems that were raised.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Senator Surville.
I'll just say that just because nobody has not tried to unwind it doesn't mean some of us have thought about it. I'm looking here online, and it says the ACLU has a document that says the 10 big problems with E-Verify. So it seems like they still have problems with it, and I'm just not sure there's an agreement that it's working well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are there additional questions for Senator Surville? Okay, are there people here for this legislation? Or are there people opposed to this legislation? Okay. Are there people for the legislation? Okay, then let's hear the other side. Total of 5 minutes, yeah.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Monica Sarmiento. I'm the executive director for the Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights. Currently, we're facing the biggest worker shortage in the United States in the last 50 years. The Commonwealth Institute of Fiscal Analysis has estimated that Virginia is tied for 7th place in the biggest worker shortage in the country. This adds undue burden to both employers and employees. We've seen this in other states, that it really causes employees to move out of those states to where they can go ahead and have easier time finding employment. The Virginia Coalition for Immigrant Rights and our 45 member organizations oppose this legislation.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Christian Martinez, Research and Policy Analyst at CASA. We oppose this legislation for various reasons, such as risk of discrimination practices, hurts small businesses, negatively impacts the workforce diversity, and, as Senator Serval says, potential errors in E-Verify. Back in 2022, there was an article published on VPM News which discussed Virginia's agricultural business. Virginia's agricultural business had an economic impact of $70 billion annually, making it the state's largest private industry. More than 300,000 people are employed by farms in Virginia, many of whom are immigrant farm workers, those who come legally with worker visas and others who live in the shadows. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, immigrant farm workers make up of an estimated 74% of agricultural workers. In 2019, VPM News and the Virginia Center for Investigative Journalism reported that more than 10,000 migrant workers traveled to Virginia during the COVID-19 pandemic to plant and harvest crops, citing the Virginia Employment Commission. During the recent meeting in agriculture in the House side, the Secretary of Agriculture and Forestry cited that on the 17th, it was said that a total of $106 billion impact and over 490,000 jobs. Every job in ag and forestry supports 1.7 jobs elsewhere in the economy. Virginia currently has 41,500 farms, which estimated 97% of those being family-owned, which would have a negative impact if this bill moves forward. By implementing E-Verify, you hurt one of Virginia's biggest economic resources, as these immigrant workers have helped boost our economy while providing for their family. And so we ask that you please vote no for this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Senator Eben, do you want to talk now, or do you? Okay, next, please. You've only got 2 minutes and 23 seconds left.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is A.J. Erskine with Virginia Seafood Council. Our seafood processors utilize temporary seasonal visa programs, and we're concerned that those employees would not be registered in the E-Verify system and therefore would not be allowed for employment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, next.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. I'm Ben Stagg. I represent the Shellfish Growers of Virginia. We have the same concerns expressed by the previous speaker. We do oppose the bill. We have a number of SGV members who use these types of workers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Catherine Haynes of Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We oppose.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Copenhaver on behalf of the Virginia Agribusiness Council. Appreciate the work the senator has done, but we still have concerns with this. Senator Serval raised some of the concerns that we have about kind of the way the E-Verify program works, and with agriculture and the seasonal nature, we still remain opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Senator Sturdivant, you couldn't dig anybody up that would speak for the bill. Chase is busy this morning, huh?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair.
Senator Peake.
I would, before, just comment on the folks that spoke. And it speaks to the need that we have to do something, that something's not quite right, because you had several people come up from their industries and say, well, we don't want to E-Verify. We don't want to check and see if these folks are legal citizens or registered for green cards or are working here legally. And these are the employers who just came here and spoke, said, we don't want you to do that because we have to take advantage of these illegal people, because the message is if we pay them, the Americans won't do the work. The people who are here legally won't do the work for what we pay. That's the message that I hear. We are not paying enough to make citizens work, so we're taking advantage of illegal immigrants to do the work that Americans who are here won't do. And by not checking Social Security numbers or green cards or doing any of these things, we're able to use that lower cost labor. That's what I heard.
Yeah, well, a comment. I was reading a story online about a woman named Jessica St. Pierre, a U.S. citizen working for a telecommunications company in Florida, who was told that there was a problem with her work authorization. She should visit her local Social Security office to iron it out. She went to the Social Security office. They gave her a printout, and they told her that everything was correct in their system. But her employer told her they were using E-Verify and that the system still indicated an error. So she was eventually fired from her job, and after being out of work for 3 months, she took a new job with significantly lower pay. But later, with the help of the National Immigration Law Center, she discovered the problem was that the employer had placed 2 spaces after her last name, so she didn't match. So this is a problem where as many as 1 out of every 400 cases submitted to E-Verify resulted in a TNC determination that was subsequently reversed after an appeal by the worker, and that's just the workers that appealed. So you may think that that's not a lot, but that's more than 400,000 people improperly deprived of their right to make a living just by people using E-Verify. That doesn't count those that would get caught up on this if everyone used it. So I can't support this, and I'm not as concerned about people who may not have legal presence, but I'm concerned with people who are legally present here in the U.S. who would get caught up in this system because it's not a perfected technology. And I have a motion at the appropriate time.
Senator Locke wants to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just don't want folks out there to think that people were misrepresenting their employees or people who were speaking to be misrepresenting what was said. I have ears too, and what I heard was folks having some concerns about their employees. Not that their employees were illegal or that they did not want individuals who were illegal working in their places of employment. That's not what I heard. I just heard some concerns about what's being presented here with E-Verify. That's what I heard.
Okay, thank you, Senator Serville.
If I may just briefly
Senator
wrap
Locke,
up, Mr. Chairman.
apologize.
Yeah, thank you. To the comments that were made, all of our sister states, which all have the same or similar industries, agriculture, seafood, et cetera, all have far more stringent E-Verify requirements than we have. This would just say companies that have 100 employees or more have to, in addition to doing the I-9 that they already have to do, would simply have to enter the employee's name to confirm that they are here legally. E-Verify covers all of the databases from Homeland Security, Social Security, permanent and temporary work visas, and it's something that has been implemented in the Commonwealth for both public and private entities for more than a decade without the sky falling. And so this is, again, a way to help stem the tide of identity fraud and identity theft, but also to make sure that we are helping to raise some of these low-wage jobs that have a depressive effect when there is unauthorized labor. And I would say that there is legislation going through this body that is going, if passed and signed into law, either this year or down the road, which could have the effect of artificially driving up some of those low-wage jobs. It's going to help incentivize. It's going to incentivize a lot of industries to go and seek unauthorized labor. And so this is a way to help get in front of that and avoid that so that authorized workers are working in Virginia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the bill's before the committee. If it's reported, it has to go to finance.
Substitute motion?
Motion to report and refer to finance has been seconded. There's substitute motion.
To PBI.
That substitute motion to PBI, it's been seconded. The substitute motion takes precedence. What was the noise? Was there? Okay. Okay. Substitute motion takes precedence. Please open the roll.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
Okay, the bill is PBI'd. Do you have another bill, Senator?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Next on the list is Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to present Senate Bill 87, and I do have an amendment. I'm actually replacing the last three lines of the bill, which is the meat of the bill, lines 143 to 147.
Fix it then. Senate Bill 87, is there a substitute? Okay, we've got a substitute. Is there a motion to adopt the substitute? Okay, motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye. Okay, the substitute's before you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what this bill does is it merely states that as part of value-based arrangements, these would be health insurance arrangements, a provider panel contract between a carrier and a primary care provider may include provisions that promote comprehensive screening using evidence-based tools for mental health, and appropriate referrals by the primary care provider to mental health services that may be on site via telehealth or through off-site referral. What this bill does, the purpose of this bill is encouraging, if at all possible, the provision of mental health services on site. And it's something that the industry is moving towards anyways because it makes good sense for the consumer and the patient and the provider, and it makes really good sense for the bottom line. There's no opposition to this bill that I'm aware of. I did work with Doug Gray and the healthcare insurance group.
A couple of issues that were raised by council
Okay.
were definitions of mental health services and primary care providers. Different? Okay, that was the original bill. Okay. Are there people here who want to speak in favor or in opposition to the bill?
Those online who wish to speak to this bill, please raise your hand now.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Doug Gray on behalf of the Virginia Association of Health Plans. I just wanted to thank Senator Favola for working with us, and we support the bill.
You support the bill. Okay. Is there any?
Mr. Chair, Lauren Schmidt on behalf of the Virginia chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. We support the bill. We think integrating mental health with primary care is a great way to address the provider shortage we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any opposition? Okay, got a
Move to
motion.
report.
To report. It's been seconded. The motion is to report and re-refer to finance. It's been seconded. Are there other motions? Please open the roll.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's 15-0.
Senator Favola, you don't have any more bills. Delegate
Not before this committee.
Senator Rome's got. Senator Rome. Turn your attention to Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members of the committee here. I have SB 286 here, and this language promotes the undergrounding of otherwise vulnerable and disruptive above-ground transmission lines under a very specific set of circumstances. This only relates to the Prince William Digital Gateway in western Prince William County, which is under proposal. I'll also note that case is that project is in court right now, so there's not even a guarantee that it goes forward, but in the event that it does, what the whole point of this is saying is that it would be in the public interest to have buried transmission lines in this area. In the public interest does not mandate the SEC to do it. At the same time, it does elevate the cause for it. Now, we will also note that in the language here, we use the phrase at least 69 kilovolts and less than 500 kilovolts. Now, Dominion is neutral in this bill, as they were with the identical legislation last year. And in Virginia, they've told me that they don't bury 500 kV lines. In fact, there's only one buried 500 kV line anywhere in the country. It's in Washington State. And so, however, you very often will have 230 kV lines. This body in 2018 voted for the pilot program that created the hybrid partial burial ground, or burial for the transmission lines associated with the data center in western Prince William and over in Haymarket. And so that was created in 2018. That was the first time this sort of legislation was coming up then. Then in 2019 and ultimately successfully in 2020, we passed my bill to ban above ground transmission lines along the I-66 corridor between Gainesville and Haymarket for the rest of this decade. And then last year, this legislation, identical legislation, advanced on a bipartisan vote out of subcommittee in the other chamber. The problem is the committee chair at the time, who's no longer a member of the body, got the bill confused with another bill that was regarding stormwater management. And then on a party line vote, the bill went down. So this time around, we've brought it back. And Mr. Chair, I know you had raised a concern regarding cost earlier before we got here. So just to put that in perspective here, number one, there is no determination of cost for this line because there is no proposal for routing for this line yet. It has yet to go in front of the SEC. There is yet to be a routing proposal commensurate with the bill. And then the last thing I would say on this, Mr. Chair, is that when we're dealing with the undergrounding of transmission lines in this area, the people in Western Prince William in 2006 and again in 2014 have made it very clear they do not want above-ground transmission lines in the general vicinity. While this will allow a 500 kV, the goal and hope here is that if they need ancillary 230s or something along those lines, that those would be able to be buried.
Okay, Senator Dugal has a question.
Mr. Chairman, I very much understand the desire not to have transmission lines overhead in your area. I think many of us have constituents that feel the same way. But the question that I have is if they are buried, that is typically more expensive than if they're run overhead. And doesn't that cost get transferred to other ratepayers in the system?
Mr. Chairman, I would tell the senator in this case that it just so happens that my seatmate on the Senate floor this year has a bill in to deal with that exact issue. And so, yes, a typical burial is more expensive. At the same time, we also have existing precedent from this body on multiple occasions of either outright supporting undergrounding bills that were voted on by, both bodies in the General Assembly, and at the same time, simply stating in this case that it's in the public interest just heightens the concern for when it goes in front of the SEC without giving the directive to the SEC that that has to be the final approval.
Are there additional questions for Senator Rome? Okay, are there people in favor of this or opposed to it? Well, I'm going to get 5 minutes aside, okay? And I'd appreciate it if you find out if anybody is online for this bill. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Kyle Hart. I'm here on behalf of the National Parks Conservation Association, also known as NPCA. NPCA advocates on behalf of our nation's national parks, of which this bill pertains to one of them, Manassas National Battlefield. As many of you are likely aware, a very large data center project was just approved by Prince William County adjacent to the battlefield. And while NPCA and partners fought the approval of that project, and we were disappointed by the outcome of the approval, this bill, I believe, takes the necessary steps to protect the battlefield from additional infrastructure that will be eventually possibly required to support that data center development. As the senator kind of pointed out, that at this time we're unsure what that will eventually look like, and so we think this bill takes the necessary precautions to protect the battlefield. We also, and I'll testify in a moment for Senator Subramaniam's bill, believe that these bills go hand in hand, and we'd love to see both of them advance. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Matt Caddo. I serve as the chairman of the OHA Roundtable representing 140,000 homes in Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William, and Fauquier County. We are strongly supportive of the bill that would require these burials to be done because of the adverse impacts that come to our community from above-ground transmission lines to feed a set of data centers that are unprecedented in their size and therefore unprecedented in their impact on these homes and the residents that occupy them. We urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kate Smiley, and I represent the Data Center Coalition. We are here to express concerns. We are not opposed to the undergrounding of power lines generally. Simply because this bill is not under the existing pilot program statute that the General Assembly established in 2018 for undergrounding power lines through the SEC and the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity process, it is unclear to us how this would be operationalized, as it does not provide a lot of clarity in terms of what lines the bill is seeking to include or necessarily exclude. Finally, the scope would seem to include power lines for multiple data center projects approved or to be approved within the articulated radius, potentially extending to future projects in perpetuity. We respectfully ask for your consideration of our concerns, and thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Tracy Banner with McGuire Woods Consulting, representing QTS, which is a data center, co-location data center developer and operator in Henrico, Loudoun, and Prince William counties. We are in the Digital Gateway approved zoning application. It took a 3-year effort of the county adopting a comprehensive plan amendment, zoning ordinance, and a very long zoning process. We oppose this bill for focusing on a particular project, not using the accepted state plan pilot program run through SCC, which would allow all the stakeholders to be at the table. We would like this not to pass. We hope you will consider this issue being one of the many that the JLARC study is going to take up around data centers statewide about how we balance all of the concerns and interests and benefits of the industry. Thank you.
Marston, I think, has got a question for you.
Thank you, and maybe this is a question too for Senator Rome, but it said that we need to underground it. How far away from a facility like this would the undergrounding have to begin if it's coming in from, say, the other side? You know, you've got the park and you've got the data centers that are close by. And suppose the undergrounding is coming in from the far side. How far away would it have to start undergrounding just because the project requires undergrounding? How far away would it have to start?
See, that is a really technical question because from an undergrounding the line, technically, what makes sense, what is safe, what is sustainable for an underground line? I don't know how far it has to go. The projects have significant amount of buffer that's built in around them as part of their proffers. So unfortunately, I don't know a specific answer to that question.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Senator Rome has the answer to my inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Senator Morrison's question here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, now please forgive me for doing this on Google Maps here, but I'm going to show you the general vicinity here where the Prince William Parkway meets I-66, and it's in that area in Gainesville, Manassas area, where there is an existing substation that is already over there. You'll notice that along the 66 corridor in this area, you have not very far to go from that substation, which would be located here, Conway Robinson Memorial State Forest being right there next door, the Manassas Battlefield being right up here. You're talking about a very short distance of probably less than a mile to connect to the first data center, depending on the end of the southern transmission. But as previously noted, if the project begins with a 500 kV line, that is exempt in this bill from being undergrounded because projects like that are not undergrounded in Virginia. The goal here is that if they require ancillary lines to connect on both sides of Pageland Lane, that those lines will end up being undergrounded. And also to respond, Mr. Chairman, to one of the earlier claims regarding this in terms of perpetuity and not knowing what else this will affect, this legislation is drawn specifically to Pageland Lane. If you read where it says here, within half mile of National Battlefield Park and within 1 mile of a state forest, that state forest is Conway Robinson Memorial State Forest. It has to meet both of these while also being in Planning District 8. There's exactly one area that this includes.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Reeves, do you want to go now or do you want to wait?
No, I'll go now. Senator, what does not very far, how much does that cost?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would tell the senator in this case that The SEC is going to make the determination in terms of what that ultimate cost would be. What I will say to the senator in the meantime is that generally speaking, before the SEC, they receive multiple routes, multiple proposals from basically anyone who's proposing the transmission line in the first place. Therefore, you're going to have an indeterminate cost before it goes directly in front of the SEC, as you'll have multiple routes and multiple proposals.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow
Senator
up.
Reeves.
So we're doing this in other parts. We're burying lines. We got to have a general low ball. I mean, we're dealing with trying to put broadband on telephone poles, and it's costing us millions and millions of dollars. So I just would like a ballpark figure if the senator can get me one. It doesn't have to be today, but I'd like to see kind of what that would cost.
Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to follow up with the senator offline to be able to do that.
Yeah, for Senator Rome, the distance in the bill is that if it's within a half mile of a national battlefield park or 1 mile of a state forest. I was just wondering, can you even see the power line if it's a half mile away?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I would tell the senator that absolutely you can. There's an existing transmission line that, by the way, you're not going to be able to double up that infrastructure for a project like this because the size and scope of the Prince William Digital Gateway is so significant. It will require additional transmission lines. But if you were to go to Deep Run, if you were to go to any part of the second battlefield from Manassas National Battlefield Park, you can absolutely, clearly, easily see the transmission lines that are already there from pretty much any vantage point.
So a half mile away, Mr. Chairman, you can still see it.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, I think before we started,
You had,
got away with questions, we had one more speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Chris White with the Vector Corporation here on behalf of Compass Data Centers. In the interest of time, we'd associate our comments with the previous speakers. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Which set of previous speakers? Tell me.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman. I'll also note, Mr. Chairman, that neither QTS nor Compass sent anyone here to Richmond last year to oppose the identical bill that we presented in front of the House that received a bipartisan 6-2 vote at the time. And so the fact that we're now going back on precedent over this is something that I would just like to put into the public record.
Okay, are there additional questions for Senator Rome? The bill's before the committee. I think if it's reported, let's see, does it have to go to finance? I think it does, yeah. Okay, what's your pleasure?
Sorry, Madam Chair.
What's your pleasure? Been a motion to report. Is there a second? Is there a second? Senator, we don't have a valid motion before the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
Senator Lucas heard me say this the other day. I don't like that, so I'm gonna second it. I'm not gonna vote for it, but I just think there ought to be a vote on a
motion to
bill.
report and a second. Is there a substitute motion? Open the roll.
Ayes 4, noes 9, 2 abstentions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, the next on the list is Senator Boysko.
You finally killed the Democrat bill.
I voted with the Democrats.
Finally killed the Democrat.
I got that. Senator Boysko.
Thank you.
What number of the bill, is it 373?
Let's do 374 first.
374.
Got a lot of people here.
Senate Bill 374, turn your
374.
attention to Senator Boysko.
Senator Chair Reed, Deeds, and members of the committee, today I have SB 374. It is a bill that expands on our collective bargaining bill that we passed in 2020 by public employees in Virginia. First, I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Got it. All in favor of the substitute, say aye. Aye. Okay, the substitute's properly before the committee. It's a thick substitute, Senator. What kind of difference? Are there big differences?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman, the bill no longer, so it takes some groups out. It excludes sheriffs and state police, who will not be part of the collective bargaining, will not be able to enter into this agreement. It also grandfathers existing agreements in localities that have already have collective bargaining agreements with their school boards or here in Richmond. And then it clarifies who is included in local governments.
It clarifies, I'm sorry.
It clarifies the local government. So any county, city, or town is defined in 15.2102, or local or regional political subdivision of the body politic or corporate designed by the General Assembly, school division, public transportation provider, and local employees of the local.
Okay, the committee will recall that last week we had Senator Lucas's bill that dealt with firemen only, and this is a broader bill, but you've narrowed it down somewhat. Okay,
Senator Deeds, this is out. Senator Lucas's bill is a separate one. This deals with the other groups, except for the the state police and the sheriffs.
Okay.
They are not included.
The
at their
sheriff's a
request.
constitutional officer. I'm sure they asked to be excluded.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator
I didn't hear that, but maybe it's the same question I had. What about clerk's employees, commissioner revenues employees, treasurer's employees, Commonwealth's attorneys employees, all the elected officials that are at will now?
So the sheriffs are always going to be the loudest, but the same argument, I guess, exists for the other constitutional officer employees.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McDougall, if you go to line 115 of the substitute, elected officials, persons appointed to fill vacancies in elected office, boards or commissions, representatives of public employers, including administrative officers, directors, or chief executive officers, confidential employees, temporary public employees, judicial branch employees, patients and inmates employees working for the legislature, law enforcement, and any officer elected to pursuant to Article 7.
I think Senator McDougall's point is that none of those exemptions really exempt other officers or employees of constitutional officers. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That right now, if you work for a constitutionally provided position, you're an at-will employee and could be removed for any reason.
Why
and
don't we put the sheriffs back in?
Mr. Chairman, I'm probably not going to support it either way, but at least we should be consistent with all the constitutional officers. They should all be in or out.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McDougall, I responded to the people who reached out to me to ask specifically that they did not wish to be included.
So
and
in other words, you worked with the people that
came to me.
Came to you. Well, that's reasonable.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to still move that all the constitutional officers be excluded.
Okay, and that's just a move that.
Not just the officers, but their employees
Their
as well.
employees, like assistant Commonwealth attorneys and.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McDougall, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but if you look at lines 134 to 135, is that just sheriffs or is that all constitutional officers? Let me check. But that's any officer elected pursuant to Article 7, Section 4 of the Constitution of Virginia, and any employee of such officer.
That's what I said.
So it says any officer.
Elected.
Their employees. Section 7, Article 7, Section 4, is that just sheriffs or is that all constitutional officers?
Mr. Chair, it's a treasurer, a sheriff, an attorney for the Commonwealth, a clerk, et cetera.
So Senator McDougall signed on now.
You can co-patron it later. Mr. Chair, SB 374 builds on our collective bargaining bill that we passed in 2020 by ensuring that our dedicated public service professionals have the fundamental right to join a union, engage in collective bargaining, regardless of their zip code. And it is a matter of fairness, freedom, and the well-being of our communities. Virginia is actually behind the curve and much of the nation on this issue. In fact, 48 other states allow this, and they are doing just fine. Until 2021, we were only one of 3 states in the entire nation that had a blanket ban on public sector collective bargaining. And since 2021, many public sector workers across the Commonwealth have gained the right to collective bargaining, and in turn, their communities have benefited. But we need to expand the freedom and ensure that all of our public service workers in Virginia have the right to negotiate for fair wages and safe working conditions. And this means expanding rights for teachers and social workers, firefighters through Senator Lucas's bill, and providing a pathway to collective bargaining for the home care workers and campus workers at the public universities. No matter where you live in Virginia, you should have the right to collectively bargain if you work for a public institution. Our public workers are the backbone of our society, and by allowing them, we are allowing teachers to negotiate for smaller class size, emergency responders for more up-to-date equipment, nurses for better staffing ratios in hospitals, and creating safer and stronger communities. I want to emphasize that the people of Virginia overwhelmingly support collective bargaining for public service workers. A CNU poll shows that 68% of Virginia's voters believe in the right to public service workers to negotiate for a better life and a stronger community. We are far behind the public opinion on this issue, and I'm hopeful that we will answer the call. The history shows, that this all stems from historical injustices spanning the roots in segregation, Jim Crow laws, excluding people of color and women from equal workplace rights and freedoms, and it's an overdue opportunity to provide equal rights for all. This bill includes a public relations employee board, which I had in the 2020 version, which was stripped out of the bill, that would create a structure and guidelines to ensure that collective bargaining process is efficient and effective. It expands to higher ed workers, health home care workers, and it creates a floor for what can be negotiated. I have Ashley Dwyer here with me. She's the Director of State and Local Programs at SEIU International. She can answer.
I think Senator Morrison's got a question first.
Absolutely.
Thank you. As much a comment as a question, but if the patron has an answer to it, I'd be appreciative. What's happened in Fairfax County is that our sheriff's department has not engaged in collective bargaining while the police have. They go through the same academy, and right now we're getting to a situation where we can't staff the jail because of sheriffs leaving to go to the police department who've gotten a better deal through collective bargaining. And I don't know if this is a problem that's going to exist elsewhere in the Commonwealth. I support the bill, I support the concept, but just let it be known that problems arise when you bring people up in different levels. There's always the person who is going to be ahead of you, and I am not at that level, and it is a continuing stair step, and that's why very often local jurisdictions and the state have brought people up equally as we go along, and I'll support the bill, but may have some problems to solve as a result of that. I have a budget amendment in specifically for Fairfax County, but I have no idea where Madam Chair and the rest of the committee is going to view that. But nothing is easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden. It was at the sheriff's request that they not be included in this. They specifically reached out to me numerous times to say that they did not want to be part of the bill. So my hope had been initially that we would, but I'm trying to be respectful of the various stakeholders. As I said, I have Ashley Dwyer here who can answer technical questions of the members.
I learned that the way you ensure that a collective bargaining process worked is you had a right to strike, and you don't have a right to strike under this bill.
Mr. Chair,
So what happens when there's an impasse?
Mr. Chair, that there is no right to strike. If someone were to strike, they would lose their jobs in Virginia,
Right.
so that remains.
What of the states that have collective bargaining, how many, for public employees, how many have a right to strike for those public employees?
Mr. Chair, that's a good question. I'll ask Ashley Dwyer to
Okay.
answer that. I do not have that answer.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. I was actually pulling that up, Senator Deeds, as well. That was not one of the fun facts of collective bargaining that I had right away. If you can give me just a minute, I can confirm that number. But in the meantime, I can tell you that is part of the purpose as to why the PERB and the Labor Relations Board is critical, because it will help with conflict resolution and continuing conversations between both parties at the table. Yes, striking is a part of a leverage campaign, but there are also other ways and structures and ways to communicate and create those situations to come to a resolution.
Are there members' technical questions that you want to ask the expert? Okay, well, let's see who's in favor of the bill and who's opposed to it. So 5 minutes aside. People that are for the bill. And one online. They'll have to fit within that 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Brian Turner. I represent the Virginia Conference of the American Association of University Professors. We support this bill. We think that it's good for higher education if higher education professionals can assure that academic freedom and shared governance are built into union contracts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Come on up, closer to the...
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jenna Gabriel. I'm here on behalf of United Campus Workers of Virginia in wholehearted support for the bill. I'm myself an adjunct instructor at VCU. I'm also our chapter chair. I'm a doctoral candidate there. And I just want to urge the way that collective bargaining allows us all to work together to improve the working conditions of ourselves, but also the learning conditions of our students. I also would strongly urge, one of the things we love about this bill is that student workers are captured in the language. Student workers are essential to making our universities run, and I would urge the committee please to keep that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is River Maya Olson. I'm here with the United Campus Workers of Virginia. I just graduated from the Master's in Art Education program at VCU, where my cohort and I worked full-time, unpaid internships for 16 weeks at Chesterfield, Hanover, and Henrico public schools so that we could obtain our teaching licensure. At these public schools, teachers told me how their workload has continued to increase since COVID shutdown in 2020, but their ability to negotiate contracts for fair compensation has not. The staffing and vacancy report from the Virginia Department of Education states that there are currently 3,649 vacant teacher positions this past year, more than 3 times the number than the vacancies in 2019. If this committee wants to take action to end the teacher shortage, I urge you to pass SB 374 and fight for it in the Senate. Student workers must have collective bargaining to create affordable and accessible education. Okay.
Hi, I'm Harry Sabo, President of United Campus Workers of Virginia and a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I also support collective bargaining.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Hi, I'm Laura Ornay. I'm a graduate worker at UVA. I'm here with United Campus Workers as well. I strongly support this bill, especially the clause on student workers.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Kayla Mock with the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 400. We are in strong support of this bill as well.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Julia Newton with SCIU, also a caregiver, and I support this bill as well as SCIU. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Charles Kelly, Richmond Building and Construction Trades. We support this legislation.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Donald Baylor with the National Coalition of Public Safety Officers, representing employees in the Department of Corrections and Juvenile Justice. We support this legislation.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kirk Jones. Today I'm representing CWA Virginia State Council and the Philip Randolph Institute. We support the bill also.
Thank you, sir.
Jason Parker, Virginia AFL-CIO. Collective bargaining is a hallmark of a free society, and this bill aligns the collective bargaining rights of workers with the National Labor Relations Act rather than some permissive from the employer. Thank you.
Dr. Emily Yen, Virginia Education Association. We strongly support this bill. We believe that in addition to being beneficial to workers, this will allow a provision of higher quality public services. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Nikki Robinson, CWA, Communication Workers of America, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Rakovich, United Campus Workers, and I support this bill because I think it's important to simply be recognized. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kales, VCU faculty and also a member of United Campus Workers, and I fully support this bill for the same reasons my colleagues.
Diana Howard, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
I'm actually opposed to the bill. So
Okay.
do you want me to wait till the opposition comes up?
Put her over in the opposition. We'll get to them.
Cecilia Parks, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Parks. I'm with United Campus Workers of Virginia. I live in Charlottesville and I work at the University of Virginia. And like my colleagues, I support the bill as written.
Okay. Thank you very much. Who's next?
Zachary McKeeby, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Good afternoon. My name is Zach McKeeby. I'm a member of the United Campus Workers of Virginia and a graduate student at the University of Virginia. Public university employees face incredible levels of stress, precarity, and burnout caused by imbalances in how the university prioritizes workers. I support SB 374 because collective bargaining for public employees, including graduate workers, is needed to protect workers and to give workers the tools to push for structural change to long-standing systemic problems. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Are there people that have another view? Okay. Come on up. 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, my name is Vernon Peters. I'm with the Virginia Professional Educators of the Independent Nonprofit Teachers Association of the Commonwealth. We have 3 concerns for the bill. First, the bill sets up the Public Employee Relations Board, or the PERB, that would make collective bargaining decisions in place of local school boards. We believe school boards, which are elected or appointed within the communities, are better qualified to make collective bargaining decisions than an agency in Richmond, which in some cases will be hundreds of miles away. Second, the bill permits the PERB to authorize collective bargaining with requests from as few as 30% of teachers in a school district. So it's possible that as many as 70% of the teachers in a given district may not want collective bargaining. We believe the rights of the majority need to be taken into account. Also, we are very concerned about the abolition of the secret ballot election to select a collective bargaining agent. A secret ballot election is America's way and lessens the possibility of intimidation. Teachers and other working people deserve better. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Janet Lawson, Director for the Department of Human Resource Management. And on behalf of the administration, we oppose this bill for a variety of reasons. First, a recent study that was concluded by the National Association of State Personnel Executives, 32 states surveyed, 14 do not permit collective bargaining, which is 44%. 2 states currently actually previously had collective bargaining and abolished it back in 2015. That would be Tennessee and Wisconsin. There are reasons where it was ineffective, it was very costly, and there were no positive impacts. Turnover, retention, recruitment, grievances were no different between those that were represented versus those that were not. Other concerns we have is a very, very conservative estimate of what we believe may cost the Commonwealth to implement this would be in excess of $19 million just to implement this program. And that's mostly staffing as well as system reconfigurations. We also believe this will be inefficient with our current practices of having consistent policies, compensation structures, benefits, as you would potentially create 16 new policies per agency, 16 different pay plans, et cetera. We also believe the Commonwealth has some of the best benefits in the state, and so that's one of the primary reasons that most employees bargain. In addition, we feel our employees have a seat at the table. We don't feel a third party is needed to bring our employees to the table to have conversations. There are many avenues for employees, informal and formal, to have those discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Rich Gosko with Virginia Police Benevolent Association. I represent 10,000 of
the boots on the ground police officers in Virginia, and we wholeheartedly support collective bargaining, but not in this form. We believe that state police should be placed back in the bill. They are 940 of our members, and they've advocated for collective bargaining in this session. It's part of our agenda. We feel that a rising tide lifts all ships. As Senator Marston said, if you ad hoc this system, what are you going to do with troopers in Northern Virginia? They won't be able to compete. This does have a law enforcement component, so law enforcement agencies in the state, such as Wildlife Resources or park rangers or whoever, could also collect the bargaining, but not our troopers. I understand constitutional officers, but we also have a lot of deputies, and the system is kind of broken. It needs to be fixed and addressed. After 2020, we're reeling from COVID, and the police reform and recruiting and retention is horrible right now. So we appreciate the bill, and we hope that at some point they could add all our members in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stacey Haney on behalf of the Virginia School Boards Association. Our association has taken a position in opposition to this bill, and we would ask that you not mandate collective bargaining on our local school boards.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, we've got 2 people online. We've only got 40 seconds left. Please.
Diana Howard, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Diane Howard, I'm chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party, and we oppose this bill. Also, I'm from New York, so we know the devastation that come from collective bargaining. This bill is wholly inadequate. There's only like 7 localities that responded in the impact statement to the sister bill, and they all cited the cost of actually trying to implement this. With they don't have the payroll system to handle it. They have to hire more HR personnel and contract negotiators. And public employees shouldn't have a monopoly on government where the taxpayers go with you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
The same right.
Okay, we've got one more speaker, and just keep it very brief, please.
My name is Ben Householder, working with the National Right to Work Committee. We oppose SB 374.
You need to turn your camera on, Mr. Householder.
I apologize, my camera doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah. Neither do
May
we.
I proceed?
The National Right to Work Council opposes
Yes,
the bill.
The National Right to Work Committee, we oppose the bill. It strips workers of the right to choose their own representatives by secret ballot and imposes extreme upward pressure on taxation.
Okay, we got that. Thank you very much. Okay, the bill is before the committee. Do you want to finish up? Do you want to wrap up, Senator Boyce?
Yeah, I mean, I can fairly quickly answer some things. So having a PER board was actually streamline the process and provide a framework for localities to set up the collective bargaining. There are a patchwork of different local ordinances that are not in, they're not the same. And for instance, in Charlotte, I think this actually would save us money because in Charlottesville, for instance, the city spent $685,000 when it hired a firm to draft their ordinance. If we pass this bill, that would save. They would not have to do that. We would have the PER board who would really set the structure up. I think that the PER board would provide more guidance to the states. Again, 48 other states are doing well and have these laws on their books. And I would ask that the committee move this forward.
Okay, Senator Lux got something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1,000 years ago, when I was in law, Lord, good Lord, I didn't go to law school. When I was in graduate school, it was at the height of many sanitation worker strikes and discussions about their rights as workers. And I distinctly remember there was a poster that said, if there is dignity in all work, why is there not dignity for all workers? Yeah. And that has stuck with me throughout all of these years. And I think that the only way to get that dignity is for workers to have the ability to have a voice for themselves and the ability to discuss their desires, to be able to voice their opinions for what is right for them as workers. And with that, Mr. Chair, I move that Senate Bill 374 be reported.
Reported and referred to finance.
And re-referred to finance.
Got a motion and a second. Senator Lucas has something.
Senator Locke just stole my line, so I just associate myself with her remarks and second the motion.
Okay, got a motion and a motion that's been seconded to report and refer to finance. Unless there are additional motions, open the roll.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Okay, ayes 9, noes 6. The bill is reported and re-referred. Okay, Senator Subramanian.
I have another bill.
You've
Is
got
that
another
okay?
bill. I thought you'd hit your quota.
I have not. There's more to come, sir.
There's
We
more
are
to
not
come.
done yet.
Your supporters are abandoning you.
Senator Boysko's got 373. I'd ask you to turn your attention to Senator Boysko and the people that are leaving the room to please keep it down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is a bill that we've heard many times. I believe this is my 6th year bringing it before the body. You all passed it last year and actually got the money in the budget. This is the paid family and medical leave bill.
There's no substitute or amendments. Just
I am not aware of having substitutes or amendments. You should have the bill before you, sir.
okay. Please turn your attention to Senator Boysko.
Thank you. Each year, countless families face medical crises or welcome new children. And for people who are fortunate enough to work for an employer who can provide paid family and medical leave benefits, or who have an above average bank account and federal FMLA unpaid leave, these were manageable crises, or in the case of a new baby, a special time when a family should be a priority. But for most Virginians, these events force a cruel choice, whether to nurse loved ones or oneself through a medical crisis or an end of life, or to heal from childbirth and bond with their new baby, or pay your bills, keep your job, make sure you can cover things like rent and food and utilities and medical care and transportation. But it doesn't have to be this way, and it's not like this in the rest of the world. Like in Maryland and the District of Columbia and every other industrialized country in the world, Virginia can be a family-friendly place for workers. In 2022, I actually served on a nationwide early childhood fellowship on a bipartisan NCSL task force, drilling into the best practices for healthy outcomes for children and family. And guess what was at the top of the list? For everyone, Republicans and Democrats, it was paid family and medical leave. Among developed countries, United States, and I'm going to say this again, is the only country in the world that does not guarantee paid maternity leave. 13 states in the District of Columbia guaranteed paid access to family and medical leave, including Minnesota and Maine, which just passed it in 2023. We have the ability to move with this momentum and make it pro-business, pro-working people, and pro-economy. This would set up an insurance program, self-funded, that employees and employers would pay less than half of 1% of each paycheck to fund the program. So for an employee earning $50,000 a year, the employer and the employee would pay about $4.57 a week, about the cost of a nice Starbucks cup of coffee. Income replacement benefits would be paid by the program fund, not by the employer, and that providing that employee with the employer with the option of hiring somebody to replace them temporarily, or they can save that money. Small businesses support paid family medical leave programs, but they can't often afford it. Doing this setup would be an affordable way to provide benefits for their employees. My bill has a benefit for employers, 10 employees or fewer. The employer doesn't have to share in the fund. In Virginia, 67% and 57% of Black, Latinx, and Black workers are either ineligible or can't afford to take unpaid leave through the protections provided by FMLA. People either fail to care for their loved ones or quit their jobs, leaving themselves at risk. This makes it easier for workers to take time off without needing to quit, ensuring employers don't shoulder more of the cost for the time off, training, and replacement. Many private employers already offer generous benefits, and if they surpass this framework, then they can keep doing what they're doing. We just want to set the floor, not a ceiling. Happy to answer any questions. We've heard this numerous times. We got it into the budget last year. I hope that it will be the will of the body to pass it.
The bill has been before us in this exact form a couple of times before. Are there questions for Senator Boysko? It has to go to finance. Okay. Are there those that want to be heard on this issue? Okay. 3 online. Okay, 5 minutes aside.
Come on over.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Committee. My name is Krista Ives, and I'm from Virginia Beach, District number 22. My daughter, Gabrielle Aldea, was born with Hardikar syndrome, and it affects the entire midline of a person's body. When she was born, she was so sick that I was unable to return to work for several years. When I was finally able to return back to work, I had to pick and choose which illnesses warranted use of my limited paid time off. And in December 2020, the worst happened and Gabrielle passed away. I was lucky enough to have some time off of work and still have a job to return to, but that time was largely unpaid and it was nowhere near as long as I needed, and I will never get back that time with my daughter. I urge you to please stand with working families in Virginia. You have the power to enact paid leave, and you have the power to give families the opportunity to be with loved ones when needed. Thank you.
We're sorry for your loss, and I ask you all to respect the time. You only have 5 minutes collectively, and you're under 4 minutes. So.
Dr. Emily MVEA supports this bill.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Lenka Mendoza. I represent domestic workers and immigrant families. Today, we're here because I support the bill. She's continuing in English for me.
I am Lenka Mendoza, Executive Director of Dreamer Mothers in Action, representing the brave domestic workers and families, majority immigrant women, engaged in essential work in our state. These essential workers who have been crucial during the pandemic deserve more than praise. They deserve policies that acknowledge their reality. Paid leave not only provides them with financial security, but also honors their contribution to our society.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Christy Vance. I am a UFCW Local 400 member, and I work for Kroger. I live in rural southwestern Virginia. As a single mother, I urge you to please support and pass this bill because more than one occasion I've had to choose between working, being sick, or my children being sick, and not being able to be there with them or make myself better. Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Victor McKenzie, Executive Director with Sarah, Virginia, and we support this bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Sheila Herlihy with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We also support the bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Good afternoon. Rena Hicks with Freedom Virginia, and we strongly support this bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Emily Moore with Voices for Virginia's Children. We also support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Good afternoon. Tram Wynn with New Virginia Majority. We strongly support the bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Jason Parker, Virginia AFL-CIO. We support the bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Julie Newton, SCIU. We support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Next.
Jewel Gatton, Virginia Organizer Manager, representing Care in Action. We support this bill.
Thank you very much. Next.
Freddie Mejia with the Commonwealth Institute, and we support this bill.
Thank you very much.
Flannery O'Rourke, Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we support this bill.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Shirley Modlin, I represent the Small Business Majority, Virginia Business Council, and I support this bill.
Okay, we have some people online.
Cecilia Parks, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
I'm Cecilia Parks with United Campus Workers of Virginia, and we support this bill.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you very much.
Abby, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Okay, Abby doesn't want to speak to us. Is there anybody else?
Molly Weston Williamson, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Hi, I'm Molly Williamson, Center for American Progress. We support the bill and happy to answer any technical or policy questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else?
Kelsey Calger, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Calger with Progress Virginia. We strongly support the bill for all the reasons previously stated.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else?
Vicky Shabo, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Hi, Vicky Shabo. I'm with New America, which is a think tank. Strongly strongly support the bill and happy to answer any technical questions based on 15 years of expertise.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Okay, anybody that's got another view? Anybody that's opposed to the bill?
Those online who wish to speak in opposition, please raise your hand.
Good afternoon,
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eleni Polis with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We are concerned about the impact this legislation would have on employers, particularly small employers. It would place a significant cost and administrative burden across the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jody Roth on behalf of Virginia Retail Federation. We've always had a long-standing policy of opposing any mandates on employers. We feel it should be left up to the business owners what they can afford to do with their business. And for all the reasons from the Chamber just illustrated for you as well. With this particular piece of legislation, there is concern. It's not clear if my members who already do provide paid leave, what that means for them. Like, will this be an additional cost on top of that, and how that will be worked out? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Travis Smiley, Virginia Food Industry Association. We would associate ourselves with the comments of the previous folks. It's our stance that employers should be able to craft benefit packages appropriate to their industry. Businesses with high turnover, such as the grocery industry, face unique challenges in administering prescriptive paid sick leave. We're also concerned that by mandating this on all employers, in addition to paid sick leave that we may already provide, that there would be a perverse incentive to stop our current paid sick leave program in order to pay into this program at what could be cheaper for our industry. So the VFIA stands opposed. Thank you.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
She has one more.
Subramaniam.
Unheard. Okay, you've got another bill, 271. Which bill do you want to take first?
271, Mr. Chair.
I don't think we did a motion. I just said it was going to happen.
As long as you say so.
Okay, 271.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this bill may look familiar. It's because you heard it last year and passed it. But essentially, what we're trying to solve here is certainly you can buy solar panels for your rooftop right now if you're a homeowner, but leasing them, you run into some issues. And this explicitly allows leases between homeowners and third-party organizations and eliminates requirements for homeowners to provide proof of liability insurance as a condition of connecting to the grid, and clarifies that the homeowners with rooftop solar installation and a battery storage device will be exempt from standby charges. Basically provides a framework to allow for people to lease solar, which I think will help a lot of homeowners who want to adopt solar. So happy to answer your questions. I know there's some people who are here to testify.
Miss Senator, my question was on line 236. What's the role of the commission in this process?
Oh, and Mr. Chair, sorry, before that, I have a couple line amendments that I wanted.
Okay, you have a couple line amendments?
Yes.
Okay. Does staff have those? Do you have
staff
those?
has those.
Okay. Sure, Council, I apologize.
Move line amendments.
Okay, the line amendments have been moved and seconded. All in favor of the line amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the line amendments are before you.
Yeah, and what these amendments do, Mr. Chair, is basically we don't believe that net metering results in a cost shifting, and the First Amendment makes clear that the SEC has the authority to protect ratepayers in the case of an unreasonable cost shift, and then the Second Amendment directs the Commission in its review of the net metering program to evaluate whether there is a continuing need for standby or other charges on net metering participants. and that was at the request of stakeholders.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What would, based on your amendment that's before us, make all reasonable efforts to ensure that the net energy metering program does not result in unreasonable cost shifting to non-participating electric utility customers? What would be an example of a reasonable effort to do that? How could that be accomplished?
Example of a reasonable effort, for Mr. Chair. So, like, if it was perhaps it was a bigger project and it resulted in a cost shift to other ratepayers, that might be an example of an unreasonable cost shift. If it was a large project, I don't know. Maybe someone else can help me answer that.
I see a lifeline was cast out.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Greg Habib, Gentry-Lock on behalf of SEIA. First, I'll point out this committee passed this bill unanimously last year. In fact, the whole Senate passed the bill unanimously. It got caught up in some weird procedures in the House. Existing in the code, there are coming net metering dockets where the SEC is to review the net metering program in Virginia for both APCO and Dominion. And that language, which was requested by the utilities last year, simply says in evaluating, in going through that docket, just to ensure that there is no unreasonable cost shift involved.
Senator Obenshain.
Senator or Greg.
Senator Greg?
Or Greg.
Oh,
I wouldn't give Mr. Habib that promotion. But so if the commission, if there are reasonable efforts made, then it is permissible to unreasonably cost shift. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I would say no. What it says is they have to take reasonable efforts to make sure there is not unreasonable cost shifting. And again, that's the utilities requested language.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Obenshain.
So if they make reasonable efforts but are unsuccessful, then unreasonable cost sharing is permissible.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Obenshain, that is not what the language intends. That's not the way I don't believe anybody else reads that language. The intention of the language is to make sure that ratepayers are protected in that net metering docket. And again, this bill was unanimous last year. The only change in the language from last year there is the insertion of the word unreasonable.
Mr. Chairman, that was then, this is now.
Senator Peake's got a real question.
Well, that was a real question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Senator, Mr. Habib, tell me, what is this addressing? I get lost in the customer generator, eligible agriculture. What's the practical? Where do we see this? What's the issue? Who's generating it? Who's got the solar panels? What's going on? Yeah. Tell me in very simple terms where this is arising.
Essentially, you want me to? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Peake. So this is for small rooftop generation, number one. There is some belief that there's lack of clarity as to whether or not you can have third-party leasing or whether or not you have to own it. So a lot of people, because the finance of rooftop solar, want to lease that solar instead of purchasing it. So the first provision is to simply clarify that you can lease it. Next provision deals with an unnecessary insurance provision that everybody agrees now is unneeded. The third deals with the standby charges. And the fourth just clarifies that you can participate in other programs, notwithstanding the fact that you're in the net metering program.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Habib, why should any of the other customers, ratepayers, pay for anybody to have solar on their rooftop? Because regardless of whether it's reasonable or unreasonable, that's the effect, is that other people are paying for you to have something at your house. Why should any customer pay that?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we don't believe they do. We don't believe there's any evidence that they do. We believe that's why the net metering docket is going to exist for both utilities over the next 2 years. They will evaluate the entire program, including any risk of cost shifting, and then they will advance the program from there. But we do not believe there is any cost shifting, there will be any cost shifting, and that's why you all created that docket already.
Mr. Chairman, then why wouldn't that line on this amendment say make all reasonable efforts to ensure that no cost shifting instead of unreasonable cost shifting occurs.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that was the language worked out with utilities that everybody supported.
Mr. Chairman, so
Senator McDougal.
so you wouldn't have an objection if we changed unreasonable to no? If that's what we're trying to do, is not have any cost shifting to ratepayers?
Mr. Chair, I would not, but I also want to be mindful of a compromise that may have been reached at some point.
That's an amendment. I move the amendment.
Okay. Describe that again, that amendment.
Chairman, on the amendment sheet that we were given number 2, line 203, 4, instead of strike unreasonable, well, does not result in strike unreasonable any.
Does not result in cost shifting.
Yes.
I like the amendment.
Okay. What say you about that?
I support the amendment.
Do you support their change to the amendment?
I do, but yeah.
Senator Bagby.
Mr. Chair, I would ask the senator.
Which senator?
The patron. If in fact he just said he wanted to respect the negotiation and the compromise, and now we're going to, on the fly, I think we need to reject that amendment.
I'll yield to the will of the committee.
Okay, do you understand the amendment? The amendment is to take unreasonable out of the Second Amendment. So that it's already been. That's the. All in favor of making that amendment to the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. That amendment did not get amended. Okay. The bill is before the committee. Okay, does this bill need to go to finance?
Everything else has.
He hasn't.
271 does not have to go to finance, so it's just a question of reporting. Okay, got a motion and a second to report the bill. Are there additional motions? If not, I open the roll. Okay. And
Ayes 10, noes 5.
The other bill, I think, in the beginning of the meeting, I just said that bills would be carried by. I did not ask for a motion, so technically the bill's still before us. And 346.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, SB 346. So essentially, the problem we're trying to solve here is that over the past year or so, we've got a lot of solar projects that have been stalled because, one, the cost to connect to the grid has gone up exponentially, 10x or more. And the second thing is the approvals for those projects have taken a really long time. And so the idea here is, right now, it's supposed to be 30-day notice period for residential, a 60-day notice period for non-residential. And, but right now that's not happening. People are being told that their projects are going to not be able to get connected 4 to 6 months in some cases. So the idea is to have some sort of enforcement of these timelines to make sure that these projects are up, because it's costing people who are trying to put these projects together a lot of money. And so that's the timing is one part of this. The other part of this is the cost, and just trying to address the fact that, certainly we have, things that need to happen to modernize our grid, but a lot of the costs are being borne by the people putting these projects together that I don't think are really necessary to them, and so the other part of this is also just trying to make sure that the costs are allocated fairly. And so we've got some people here to testify on behalf of the bill. We do have a couple of amendments as well. And if the staff could pass out those amendments.
Can staff report the amendments, or okay, we've got 2 line amendments, All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Or move the amendment, been a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second to adopt the amendments. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now explain the amendments and explain the bill.
Yeah, essentially, lines 908 to 911, line 1004 address concerns about the utility companies getting an enhanced rate of return for grid upgrades. That's essentially what that's trying to address.
Okay, 578. Okay, I assume we got people for and against, so we're going to have 5 minutes on each side. Okay.
Those online who wish to speak for this bill, please raise your hand now.
Hi, I'll be really brief. I'm Alden Cleanthus, president and co-founder of Norfolk Solar. I am one of the very few low-income focused solar companies in the entire state that stood up under the Trump Opportunity Zones and Jobs Act. I worked with both the Trump and Biden administration. And since these rules were put in place in December of 2022, I've done $0 in business. I did millions in low-income solar before that, and I've done zero in the last 14 months. So I'm asking you to support this and let me go back to work.
Good afternoon. Thank you, committee members and chairperson, and thank you, Senator Dees, for co-sponsoring this bill. My name is Tony Smith, president and founder of Secure Solar Futures. We've been doing solar in Virginia since 2010. We were the first to do a power purchase agreement in Virginia, and we represent about 25% of the projects now installed in Virginia with public school districts, hospitals, universities, etc. I also serve as co-founder and chair of the Virginia Distributed. Yes, sir. Okay, so we had two projects in Prince William County that got nixed because of exorbitant costs imposed by Dominion for parameters that they introduced in December 22. Prior to that, we had zero costs for interconnection. Now we're seeing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in costs. We tried to litigate this through the State Corporation Commission, and it's been a waffling process with one hearing examiner ruling in favor, another in favor of Dominion. The outlook looks like it's going to be 6 months to several years before the SEC finally resolves these kinds of things. What we're attempting to do here is codify this, protect net metering, protect solar customers like school districts that are trying to enjoy the savings, and to protect jobs. There have been massive layoffs in our industry. So this is about saving jobs, it's about helping schools save money, and it's about making sure that Virginia taxpayer funds go into Virginia and does not support projects in other states. Thank you.
At the risk of extending this, Mr. Smith, did I understand you that this very issue is in litigation right now?
Currently not, sir. Yeah.
Okay. It has been in litigation.
There was, I should use, there were hearings before the State Corporation Commission, and those have been ended pending further rulemakings, but nothing has definitive has emerged in that process.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Aaron Such, Solar United Neighbors, will speak very briefly on behalf of the customers. The industry estimates that there are over 50 projects. These are rooftop solar projects on schools, nonprofits, churches that are going to save money and create jobs. Dominion is essentially putting a stop work order on these projects. So per every project, think of the thousands of students, of the people in low-income churches that could start to save money. I manage a program that spans D.C., Maryland, Virginia, Florida, and Puerto Rico. We are not seeing these types of interconnection delays in any of these states. So this is a final plea on behalf of the customers. This is why we are here, to get these projects up and running so people can save money and build clean local energy into our communities. Thank you.
My name is Russ Edwards. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia with Tiger Solar. We're a subsidiary of Tiger Fuel. Going back 40 years. We are in support of this bill. We'd like to see the loophole that was created by unannounced, surprised grid improvements because of these commercial solar projects be put through the right process, and that's what this bill hopes to do. In addition, we have millions of federal funds that are being stopped to going to local businesses and schools because of this the grid requirements unannounced this year. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kevin Hauser, Aurora Energy. We're a solar provider since 1994, and I'm just here to support this bill. Thanks for your time.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center, and for the reasons previously stated, we support this bill.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Shippey, Sierra Club supports the bill. Thanks.
Those online who oppose this bill, please raise your hand now.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy, and we rise in opposition to the bill for a few reasons. One, there is a current rulemaking open at the SCC. That docket is open, and we've offered an interim and bridge solution to help some of these projects that have been described as in limbo, which was rejected by the advocates for this legislation. The Virginia Clean Economy Act increased the allowed size of these projects to 3 megawatts. These are not small installations. These are, in some cases, 30-acre projects. It is our duty to examine whether they will impact grid security or reliability. We have to do that to ensure reliability for all of our customers and safety of the communities we serve and those who might be working on the grid. And really what's in question is, can these projects backfeed electricity onto the grid? Can we make sure that if somebody's working on the grid, that it's not going to inadvertently cause a backfeed and cause damage to either equipment or the safety of our people? So each of the projects gets a circuit by circuit examination. There are many projects that have been approved with little to no interconnection costs. It depends on what's happening in the circuit. How far is it away from reliable communication infrastructure? What's the voltage? What's the variability on the line? And so when I say that it applies to very few projects, there are less than 130 projects really in question. They are the largest of these projects, and that is out of over 40,680 projects that have been interconnected over the last several years, so less than 0.3%. So please bear in mind that each of these projects is located behind one customer's meter, meaning for decades, one customer will benefit from each of these projects. And what's being asked of the rest of us is, in order to protect the grid from backfeeds from their system, that the rest of us bear the cost of that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Larry Jackson with Appalachian Power, and we're opposed to this bill. There are a number of reasons why there would be delays in interconnecting one of these customers, and we don't believe there should be financial penalties for not being able to hook someone up within the projected time frames. If there was an additional transformer, if there are pole extensions, et cetera, that might require it to take a little longer. We don't believe that there should be financial penalties for that, so we ask that you oppose the bill. Thank you.
Is there anybody online? Okay, the bill is before the committee. If it's, I don't think it has to go to Senate Finance. No. Okay, the bill's before the committee. Move to report. Okay, is there a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Was there? Oh, there was a motion. Was it seconded?
No, I have an alternative motion.
Okay.
Just trying to get a sense of the committee up here. I think this maybe needs to go by for a week and have the patron talk to the folks out there to see if there's any more amendments that maybe ought to happen. So I would ask the bill to go by for a week.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a good motion. I think that some of us feel very much like we've had the conversation with real estate projects or development, that we want to make sure that there's some timeframes in place, but we want to make sure that we're not creating other challenges down the road. And I think what we've heard is that the 30-day timeframes, particularly with things stacking up behind them, might be too rapid a framework. So, and maybe there's nothing that can be done, but maybe conversation helps.
2 hours ago, I said this bill was going to go by for the day, and it came back. And now I guess we want it to go by for the day. For the day. Okay, all in favor of that, say aye. Aye. Does anybody want to go ahead and dispose of it today? Okay, bye for the day. Thank you, Senator. Okay, I've got one more non-committee member, but Senator Servell's got some witnesses that need to go, and Senator Carol Foy, I apologize. Servell. Okay, Senate Bill 256, turn your attention to Senator Servell. And I think there's a substitute on this bill, is that correct? Okay, is there a motion to adopt the substitute? Okay, so moved, is it seconded? Okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute, say aye. The substitute's before you. Okay, this is a bad faith bill on insurance claims.
Right, Mr. Chairman, there's also a line amendment I'd like to make that I think Mr. Stevens had. He can report.
He wants the law students to justify.
I can read it if necessary.
The line amendment is where?
In an email that I sent to him about an hour ago.
Yeah. So it's two amendments to the substitute on line 80 of the substitute. After company, add if the insured or the insured's representative seeks adjudication as a separation action. This is actually on line 80, and it's the same change on 151. But I'll read it. If the insured or the insured's representative seeks adjudication as a separation action and the underlying judgment is appealed, any action filed under this section shall be stayed by the court pending final resolution of the appeal of the underlying judgment.
Okay, do you understand the amendment? It's been moved and seconded. Okay, all in favor of that amendment? Say aye. Okay, it's my understanding, Senator Servell, that you want this bill to be heard today because you've got witnesses, but it's a longer discussion, so the bill will not actually be
correct
resolved until next week.
You got it.
Okay, we're just here to hear a little bit of testimony from you and then your witnesses.
Right. Just so everybody understands why we're here, this bill has to do with insurance companies that fail to pay when somebody has a claim under their uninsured motorist coverage on their auto insurance or their underinsured coverage on their auto policy. So that's when you've bought coverage in case somebody hits you and they don't have enough coverage. And what happens out there is that because of a case that came down from the Supreme Court of Virginia, some insurance companies have stopped negotiating these cases until pretty much the day before trial, which causes people to incur a lot of expense, a lot of headache, a lot of trial. It causes some of the other insurance companies to have to spend a lot of money. And this basically creates a way for you to hold an insurance company responsible if they don't negotiate in good faith on a case. And there's some students from UVA Law who've done some research of how this works in other states, who've done a lot of work on this with me, who helped write this bill, and they're here today. I want to make sure they had a chance to speak to the committee since they came here from class today. They've taken off the entire day to be here. It's not clear to me this is going to go today, given our time frames.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Chris Seiler, and I'm a student at the State and Local Government Policy Clinic at the UVA School of Law. The views I express today are my own and not those of the university or the law school. I've had the privilege of working with Senator Servell to develop this legislation. I'm here today to ask that you vote for SB 256. This bill obligates automobile insurers to act in good faith toward their own policyholders when they've been injured by a third party who does not have enough insurance to make the policyholder whole. If an insurance company fails to act in good faith, the policyholder would have a cause of action against the company. This change has three important benefits. First, SB 256 closes a gap in Virginia law created when the Virginia Supreme Court ruled that this good faith obligation does not exist unless the injured party first goes to court and wins a lawsuit against the uninsured driver. SB 256 will make it much less likely that drivers who have already paid for this insurance will go to court and, as in that case, wait 4 years to recover $30,000 in medical bills and lost wages. Second, by creating this good faith obligation, SB 256 incentivizes insurers to do right by their policyholders right away instead of forcing them to file costly lawsuits, clogging the courts, and wasting everyone's time and money. Last, SB 256 improves the chances that victims receive the benefits they are owed and recover the cost of their accident much sooner. This will be good for them and their families, or all of us and our families, because the situation that we're discussing could happen to anyone. I should also point out that SB 256 does not create an obligation for insurance companies to pay new or increased benefits, only to act in good faith when their policyholders seek to utilize the uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage that is part of their policies. For all these reasons, and those offered by Senator Sturtevant, we ask that you support this bill. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Marston wants to grill you.
All right, here we go. Thank you. Now, the penalty for bad faith here is double the amount of the award. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that not, would that not provide an incentive for the plaintiff's attorney here, trial lawyer, to root for bad faith because they would participate in recovery of their fees in that doubling? In other words, it would basically double their fee?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marston, I think that to answer your question directly, there's possibly that incentive. However, the bill is very clear in stating the circumstances in which bad faith can be found. It has to be it has to be a bad faith action, right? So any denial of payment or settlement would not necessarily be bad faith. So trial attorneys might have that incentive. However, I think that this bill would do a better job of incentivizing insurance companies to act in good faith toward their insureds.
Bingo.
Mr. Chairman,
Marston still
follow-up
got
questions? That would it be a reasonable amendment to say that the penalty for the bad faith should not accrue to the plaintiff's attorney, but only to the injured in this situation?
I defer to you on that one.
Mr. Chairman, I would tell Senator Marsden, I don't think it works that way in any other state. I haven't met an attorney out there that's rooting for a bad faith claim. The way you set up a case is you make a demand that's within the policy limits within more than 30 days before trial, so you don't have that situation. And so it seems to me that your proposal is kind of a solution in search of a problem. I mean, and there's a couple other lawyers up here too that do the same kind of work. Senator Dietz, I know, does a little bit too.
It creates more of an incentive for the insurance company to behave and pay claims when they've got the responsibility to do so, and not to commit bad faith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're asking the wrong person questions.
Wait.
Yeah, we'll hear it in full next week. So he can go back to his studies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually had experience dealing with this, and so my question is, insurance companies dealing with bad faith. I was actually a part of a bad car accident that ended my NFL career, and so while I was insured here in the state my policy was in Virginia, I was a passenger in a car that got in a car accident in Arizona, and the insurance company acted in bad faith. It took over 3.5 years for me to win a suit in Arizona before I can even begin to for that insurance company to act in good faith. So my question is, does this have jurisdictional issues when it concerns if insurance company, if the policy is in Virginia but you're getting a car accident in another state, then if insurance company doesn't respond, or acting in bad faith within a certain amount of time, would they incur double the fine, if you will?
Mr. Chairman, I would tell the senator I got a case like that pending right now, and the way it works is the law of the state where the policy was issued governs. So if it was a Virginia insurance policy, but the collision happened in Arizona, Virginia law would apply to the insurance situation, so you would still be entitled to try to get, if it was bad faith that it occurred, the double damages and the attorney's fees would be in play. I got a case right now where somebody from North Carolina was traveling through Virginia, and he had a North Carolina policy, and we had to apply North Carolina law in Virginia because that's where his policy was issued. So that's how that would work. Although I don't know if that's a question for the UVA law student here.
Well, for you or the UVA lawsuits,
8.01, 66.1 was always the small claims, bad faith.
Right.
But your bill is throwing in 38.2 into 8.01, 66.1. Well, that's what it shows up there, and then when I
Well,
read it, the
it's-
substitute, it starts out 8.01, 66.1, and then it references 38.2 on page 3
Right.
at line 62.
Right, what it references is somebody who writes an insurance policy under 38.1, which is the car insurance section.
Well, 38.2 is.
38.2, whatever, that's the car insurance section it's
But
referencing.
and 38.2 is the UIM part. But why is the 38.2 stuff thrown into 8.01, 66.1? They are not the same. 8.01, 66.1 is only small claims, a refusal to settle a small claim. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman?
I would just ask before we come back next week to see.
Senator Serval, is that something you want to answer now, or you want to wait till next week?
I'll just tell the senator that the Supreme Court of Virginia case that caused the problem was interpreting subsection D, which we're striking in 8.01, 66.1, so we're taking that out. The bad faith cause of action could live anywhere in the code if you wanted to, but in order to deal with the Supreme Court case, you have to get rid of subsection D in 801, 66.1.
All right. Mr. Chair, and I would just ask maybe council to look. It seems like we have two separate 8.0, 66.1, put it in for that, and then the other part should go in actually under 38.2. I don't know why 38.2 is under 66.1.
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
We can have
but
that
anyway,
lawyer
thank
talk
you.
offline.
Look at Tom. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate letting us go early.
Okay, Senator Carol Foy, before you get up here, I'd like ask Senator Serval to make a motion to carry over for the year Senate Bill 578. Okay, that's a wind energy bill that I put in because I'm worried that we're not going to meet our goals on alternative energy. But the bill, we're going to have the committee's going to have a longer conversation about how the cure is going to work, and this might be a bill that we want to put before the Commission for Energy Utility Regulation.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, do you want that to be part of my motion? Wait.
Just make a motion to carry over for right now, and then we can talk about the bills that we carry over, and which of those bills need to go to cure.
Okay, I already made my motion. I moved to carry over.
Okay, motion to carry the bill over for the year. Open the roll. Okay. Senator Carol Foy, I apologize.
No worries, Mr.
You've got
Chairman.
4 bills.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So which ones do you want to pass?
I will start with Senate Bill 143, Railroad Safety.
Senate Bill 143, turn your attention to Senator Carol Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Senate Bill 143, Rural Safety. Before I begin, I would like to move an amendment in the nature of a substitute, if the clerk will report.
We've got a motion made and seconded on the substitute. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, the substitute's before you. Substitute dramatically tones down the bill. Is that correct?
It does, Mr. Chairman. What it does is, in fact, strike all the language except for the language that mandates a 2-man crew.
Okay. Is it my understanding the feds are going to do this anyway?
Oh, thank
So-
you for bringing that up, Mr. Chairman. So the legislation pertinent to this bill has been pending since 2005. Now, it is bipartisan federal legislation to have a 2-man crew on the federal level. However, that has not come to fruition. And it appears as if every time it's about to come for a hearing or make it across the finish line, there's a change in administration or it just hasn't happened. And so while the federal regulations are pending, it has not yet been approved, and it has been pending since 2005. So us in Virginia, we do not want to wait any longer because this is a railway safety bill.
I get it. Okay, are there questions for Senator Carol Foy on the substitute for 143? Okay, are there people that want to speak for or against the bill? Okay, 5 minutes aside.
Those online who wish to speak for this bill, please raise your hand now.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ronnie Hobbs. I'm with Smart Transportation. I represent all the railroad conductors and engineers out there working on the freight trains. Today that we're asking for support of this bill, we are the first responders when an incident happens. It's no longer if it's going to happen. The question now is when it's going to happen. We learned something from Ohio, and at the end of the day, it takes two on a train. The locomotive stays, the engineer stays on the locomotive. The conductor, he's the first responder. He's the guy that has the bills. He's the guy that opens up the road crossings to make sure fire department, police department, hazmat teams, everybody gets involved. So I would tell you, we're asking for support to make sure that when an accident happens, it's no longer what Virginia does. It's no longer, we need the oversight of Virginia to make sure that the railroad companies themselves that have oversight to make sure that we maintain safety and security on our railways. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who's next?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Timothy R. Craver. I'm the Virginia State Legislative Board Chairman for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. Asking for your support in this bill. I just want to make sure everybody realizes that we started out with 5 members. There's 2 on that cab now. Sunday night, I brought a train on up from Portsmouth, 13,752 feet long. To think that one person could fix something if it went south real quick, it's impossible. I can't run the locomotive, cut road crossings, get a hold of everybody that needs to be hold of, and on the fact that I can't even talk to them on the radio. So we need 2 people on that train. Please support it.
When did you go from a 5-person crew to a 2-person crew?
It's been over years.
It's been.
It started on out when you had a cab on the back. When they got rid of the cab, they put an EOT. They got rid of the switchman. They've got rid of the brakeman. It's been a constant number of people on trains that are getting less and less all the time. And like Ronnie was saying, if something goes south, and it will. Night before last, there was 592 axles behind me. Each one of them represents an issue, a possible issue. Railroads are safe. They have PTT systems and different types of electronic systems in order to maintain stuff, but it doesn't take the fact that something's going to happen, and we need those 2 people.
Ladies and gentlemen, this committee and the Commonwealth of Virginia has made an investment in the safe movement of commodities and people. My name is Herbert Harris. I represent the passenger component to this equation and the locomotive engineers that operate Amtrak and Virginia Rail Express. This Commonwealth has made an investment, $3.5 billion investment in the expansion of passenger and commuter service throughout the state. I'm looking at the composition of the committee, and every part of the state that you represent is reached and touched by passenger service. The safe movement of commodities complements the expansion and growth of passenger and commuter rail in the Commonwealth. 70% of the population, 80% of the economy now have access to passenger and commuter rail in the Commonwealth, and we share corridors. Those of us that operate the passengers and commuter trains in this state share corridors and are commingle with our colleagues in the freight industry running the behemoth trains that my colleague, Brother Craver, described for you. Trust me, we need, in order to ensure the safe passage of commuters and travelers that move from the Tidewater area all the way through the western part of the region, we need to know as we go by those freight trains that we have licensed and trained professionals on them, so that 2 licensed and trained professionals on them, so if something should occur, the training and experience of those individuals will allow them to respond to the immediate emergency and will be able to transport your children, grandparents, and loved ones safely on the passenger trains that move throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. I strongly encourage your favorable report and passage of this legislation.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there others? There are about 10 seconds left. There's nobody else.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's a number of engineers and railway workers who are in support. If we could just ask them to stand, please, and be
If
recognized.
people that support this bill want to stand, that's fine.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Okay, is there another point of view represented?
Those online who oppose this bill, please raise your hand now.
Okay, come on up, come on up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Rob Bohannon from Hunt Andrews Kurth, representing the Virginia Railroad Association. The Railroad Association represents the 2 Class 1 railroads, who you'll hear from a little bit later, and also Virginia's 9 short line railroads, who would all be impacted by this legislation. As one of the previous speakers said, two-man crews is pretty standard across the industry right now. Most of the short lines, I know, operate that way, but they would be impacted by this bill. And understand, and Mr. Bentley will talk a little bit more about this, the feds are in the middle of a rulemaking right now, actually at the tail end of a rulemaking, which could be available as soon as March being this March. That rule will likely be a little more nuanced than just a blanket two-man crew rule. But this would make sense. Obviously, the Federal Railroad Administration has the knowledge and expertise to know how different railroads operate around the country. And again, anything the feds do would apply nationwide and be uniform across the states. You may ask, so understand to be nuanced, that federal rulemaking had about 13,000 comments added to it. So this is a very complex issue, more than just saying two-man crews across the board. Some short lines, operate at very slow speeds. One I know I talked to down in Hampton Roads operates at about 10 miles an hour. Operate a switching station down at the terminal. So that's could be an exception there that may be necessary. They have two-man crews now. That's their standard, but just keep in mind that all railroads aren't the same, especially short lines can be a little bit different. Some operate on as little as a dozen miles of track in Virginia, very, very short distances for short line railroads. And keep in mind that this legislation applies only to freight railroads. So the passenger railroads like Amtrak that use the same tracks as the railroads, they currently only require one person on the locomotive. So you have freight railroad where the mandate is 2, but when passenger trains go with people on board, the requirement is only 1. So we'd ask you to oppose the bill in its current form due to the federal rulemaking already underway. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tim Bentley with Norfolk Southern. I know you've seen me come before this body many times talking about federal preemption of state railroad issues. I do want to emphasize in follow-up to what Mr. Bohannon said, there is a current rule pending before the White House OMB on two-man crew. The FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, issued a notice of proposed rulemaking in 2022. And that regulatory action is pending currently. We expect a final rule by late March or early April. So by the time any bill were enacted, we would already have a potential difference between the federal rule. And so it's certainly our recommendation. We've always believed that crew size should be negotiated in collective bargaining. But if it's not in collective bargaining, we believe that there needs to be a system-wide, nationwide standard of federal regulations. That's what the Constitution, that's what the Interstate Commerce Commission Termination Act and other federal rail safety acts require. And so we would just ask that you take that into account, allow the rulemaking to go through its course, and oppose the bill at this time. Thank you.
I am Randy Marcus with CSX Transportation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments to add on what Tim said. So for the last 100 years, crew staffing, wages, healthcare benefits, and work rules have been collectively bargained between the railroads and our labor, and that does provide a structure for us to move forward together. Railroads cannot change the existing two-person crew standard without agreement of labor, and so if this bill does not move forward, crew sizes will not change at all. CSX does not have any plans to change from two-person crews unless the future technology achieves safer, more efficient and productive operations. And we'd have to have the agreement of labor to do that. One note on Senator Deeds had asked earlier that as the number of people in the crew has changed from 5 to 3 to 2, that we've actually seen the number of accidents to decreased about 80% over that period of time, and in the two-person crew era that we're in now, it's decreased about 40% since 2000. So technology, infrastructure spending is kind of what we see as the genesis of safer rail operations. I have some other folks to defer to.
Be quick, Mr. Chairman. Ethan Betterton, Virginia Chamber of Commerce. For all the reasons previously stated, the Chamber of Commerce opposes the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Rachel Jones, Deputy Secretary of Transportation, and for the aforementioned reasons, I think waiting for the federal rule that's at OMB right now would be important. And additionally, though, I really want to thank Senator Carol Foy for taking a lot of time to work with the port and with others to make some major changes to this bill, but we remain in opposition. Thank you.
Last but not least, Mr. Chairman, Ross Grogg on behalf of the Virginia Maritime Association, and we are also opposed to the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the last word? Yes. So just to address a couple things that were brought up, as far as collective bargaining, we want this to be the safety standard going forward. And what oftentimes happens in collective bargaining, that there'll be issues with pay and two-man crew, and something has to be compromised. And we don't think that the safety of the Commonwealth or the service should ever be compromised. Again, as stated previously, that the pending legislation, federal legislation, has been pending since 2005. So there's no reason or guarantee to believe that the federal government will actually take action on the Federal Railroad Administration proposal. So we would ask that this body make a law now at this time, and if and when the federal government does move, then the federal law will be preemptive to this state law. But as of now, that is not true. I would also want to make sure that it was heard that this is codifying the status quo. Two-man crews are there to protect workers from fatigue, prevent derailments, keep communities safe, effectively respond to emergencies, and two-man crews are the norm, and my bill will formalize this safety standard because it's a widely accepted safety standard, and what we're doing in this moment is just codifying something that is happening and should happen. We remember what happened in Ohio and the millions of dollars and threats to the life and safety of so many people, because we need to make sure that we have engineers and conductors ready to go on these trains to keep everyone safe. This is a union-supported bill, a SMART-supported bill. I think this goes to safety and it goes to service, and I hope it is the will of the body to pass this, to refer this bill.
Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Motion to report.
Second.
Got a motion to report and a second. No substitute motion. Open the roll. I've got his proxy.
But you can just tell.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, then vote yes.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay. What's your next bill, Senator?
Senate Bill 137, Electric Utilities, SEC to ensure energy policy at the lowest reasonable cost. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, before I continue, I would have an amendment in the nature of a substitute and ask the clerk to report the substitute.
Move substitute.
Okay, been a motion. Is there a second on the substitute? Okay, motion and a second for the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? The substitute's before the committee. Just if you can tell the committee what the differences are, and then describe the bill.
Yes, clerk, can you report the substitute, please?
Mr. Chair, Senator Carol Foy, the substitute specifies the types of petitions to which the rebuttable presumption in subsection A applies, and revises subsection C to apply to situations where an identified electricity need is limited to a specific geographic area. Thank you.
The rebuttable presumption is basically that certain things are not in the public interest. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougal.
Just what, taking into account all cost-effective demand-side management options, that means that each and every case the commission would have to look at each and every demand-side management option to determine if it was cost-effective?
Yeah.
You?
Mr. Chair, Senator McDougall, under the bill, the Commission would have the affirmative duty to ensure the Commonwealth implements the energy policy of the Commonwealth and in a manner that maintains a reliable and adequate supply, taking into account all cost-effective demand-side management options. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, so with that, if the commission, it's the commission's affirmative duty, so the commission would have to look at each demand-side management option to determine if it was cost-effective. Each potential.
Mr. Chair, Senator McDougall, that is also how I read it. I do not know if the Commission would interpret this language differently, but.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so the bill empowers the SEC to ensure that future investments are developed affordably while also ensuring the reliability and resiliency of the grid. The bill empowers the State Corporation Commission to implement the Commonwealth's energy policy at the lowest reasonable cost, clarifying the Commission's authority to prioritize least cost solutions in developing the Commonwealth's energy policy, impose adequate protections to shield customers from unreasonable construction or operational risk, such as cost caps and performance guarantees, prevent cost recovery from customers if a utility abandons the construction of a project before the facility is operational, and evaluate transmission and distribution costs associated with new generation projects and assess if alternative demand-side management, energy storage, or other generating solutions are more cost-effective. This bill, in essence, makes sure that the review by the SEC is that we are moving forward into this green, clean energy economy with projects that are reasonable and that are cost-effective, and that if there's a project that's abandoned, that the share of those costs aren't passed on directly to the ratepayers.
Okay, do you understand the bill? Are there questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
Sorry, maybe Senator Carol Foy. I mean, this bill basically rewrites the public interest statement for basically all energy decisions that the SEC has to make in, almost every case, right?
Well, under established regulatory principles now, they use the used and useful standard. What this does is pretty much puts in guidance and guardrails. Currently, there is no clear mandate to implement the Commonwealth's energy policy while minimizing costs, which has diminished the State Corporation Commission's authority to impose certain consumer protection measures and prioritize the most cost-effective solutions.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, for the question.
Senator Surville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I had a lot of other people nodding their heads, not only over there, but out in the crowd. This would be like changing the burden of proof in every civil case in Virginia. That's effectively what this would do with the effect it has. It's a really big policy change is my point. And it seems to me like this kind of policy change is exactly what we created the CUR or staffed it up to be able to consider these kinds of really big, huge policy decisions instead of trying to litigate them here in 10-minute hearings.
I worry about this language. It creates potential conflict and if we're ever going to meet our goals under the Clean Economy Act, and they're not the very cheapest thing. What do? We stick with coal if it's cheaper?
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would say that coal is not cheaper. Now that your clean and green energy sources are actually cheaper now, and our battery storage is better, energy efficiency is more cost effective. So what this does is says that you have to seek out the low cost available, and if there are projects that started, that if they are abandoned, which I think is one of the most important provisions, that those costs can't be passed on to the ratepayers.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Surville.
And Senator Carol Foy, it just seems to me like this is a really big policy decision, and I'm really uncomfortable making this big of a change without a lot more dialogue and discussion. And we have about 7 new employees that are about to get hired for the CUR to give us advice on stuff like this. And it just seems to me that's probably a better place to talk about this off session. We're not under all this pressure to get these bills done real quick. And would the patrons see it as friendly for it to be carried over for the year so we can have the CUR look at it and then talk about this over the next 12 months? Or I think Senator Lucas is a good mind reader.
What she said. It is the will and recommendation of the body. That's what I'll go with. But I do believe that this committee, we do big and bold things all the time. And when we're talking about meeting the standards of the VCEA, oftentimes we have to put in guidance and guardrails to direct the SEC on what that means. And we want to ensure that projects are only going forward that can get us to our guidelines or our goals, and also that we're protecting ratepayers at the same time. So when you don't have a lot of direction, there has to be guidance put in place, and I believe that's what it does. But I do have a couple of people who want to speak to the bill.
Before motion, let's see, are there people here that want to speak to this bill?
Those online who wish to speak to this bill,
For
please
or
raise your hand.
against?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. For the past few years, we've been arguing at the State Corporation Commission in those proceedings that they should be trying to pursue the goals of the Commonwealth and do so in a least cost manner. This bill, in our eyes, codifies that, and so we would ask you support it. Thank you.
You don't see this bill as creating a conflict between developing alternative sources of energy and keeping the costs as low as possible?
Mr. Chair, no, because of the reference in here to the Commonwealth Energy Plan, and there are certain metrics in there that require a certain percentage of the generation by 2030 to come from renewables, and then 100% by 2045. And so I think those provisions would cabinet to clean energy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We see this as mostly keeping in with the construction that the Commission already has, the directive to provide the least cost energy to provide the reliable energy source for the Commonwealth. To the question about it being like this overarching all with DSM, demand side management is just energy efficiency, and the least cost energy is the energy not used. So that's actually the best way to get to our goals without going overboard. So the least cost energy would be to actually improve our DSM and really lean into demand side management, lean into energy efficiency. We see this as a pathway to really direct the Commission to do what it's already been doing, which is to really look out for the ratepayer. Thank you.
Well, okay, I think we've got one person online who wants to speak in favor of this bill. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Will Cleveland, please unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for taking the time. I apologize that I'm not there in person, but COVID has run rampant through my household. The Virginia Clean Economy Act sets Virginia on a course for clean energy by 2050. There has been concern ever since that bill passed that clean economy was going to lead to either unaffordable electric bills or unreliable service. The goals of this legislation are to ensure that Virginia's Utilities and State Corporation Commission ensure that we hit those targets while maintaining reliability and affordability. It does not change anything other than to say if you are proposing a plan or a project that does not comply with the clean energy policy as enacted by the Virginia General Assembly, then you are presumptively not in the public interest. A utility could theoretically overcome that presumption, but the idea is to make sure that reliability, clean energy, and affordability are always sought together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Murray, you're in opposition. Wait. More people in opposition? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray, on behalf of Dominion Energy, I apologize. I'm just reading the substitute online. I believe the comments I'm going to share are still applicable. The substitute
We manage very much to affordability. We've had rates below the national average since 2005, but we also manage to reliability. In defining lowest reasonable cost on line 15 of the bill, the substitute and the introduced bill both define PJM as lowest reasonable cost. Just less than a year ago, in February of 2023, PJM issued the report I have in my hand about the reliability risks facing PJM. I'm just going to read you one brief sentence from the executive summary. I have copies for the committee if folks are interested. Our research, this is not our words, these are PJM's, who is presumed under this bill to be both the most lowest cost and most reliable. Our research highlights 4 trends below that we believe in combination present increasing reliability risks during the transition due to a potential timing mismatch between resource retirements, load growth, and the pace of new generation entry under a possible low new entry scenario. Mr. Chairman, lowest reasonable cost is something the Commission knows how to do. They do it in the IRP proceedings, but there are times when it doesn't make sense. It's not to use the Commission's decades-long standard reasonable and prudent. For example, if you have an upcoming extreme cold event like we had Christmas Eve 2022, it's not lowest cost, but it is reasonable and prudent to order fuel oil for your dual fuel units in case the gas pipeline is not available to you so you can still keep the lights on. That is our number one job, keeping the lights on. Another example, in advance of our hurricane, we routinely get every bucket truck and every line worker that is available nationally and regionally and have them fueled up, ready to go. Sometimes the hurricane misses Virginia, and we don't need those line workers. We still pay them. We send them home with our thanks, but it was reasonable and prudent to have them ready to go. Similarly, at one time, security around a substation was a chain link fence and a padlock. Now it's bulletproof fencing, remote cameras, and other security measures I won't go into, because while that is not the lowest cost, it is the reasonable and prudent way to keep the lights on. We respectfully ask, in keeping with Senator Serval's comments, Mr. Chairman, that on a committee substitute dropped in a 10-minute hearing, you not change a decades-long legal standard under which utilities operate, because we have a responsibility above all to keep the lights on.
We'll be very quick. Jason Parker, Virginia State Building Construction Trades Council. We're concerned about this too. We feel like this is where ideology and reality collide, and we need to be very careful. Reliability is very important to us. We also agree that cost is important, but in some cases you can't have both sides of that coin, and we need to make sure that we stay with reliability, and that, when it gets cold and we don't want to see grandmothers freeze to death in the middle of winter. So, and we have these moments that come about every once in a while. So thank you.
Sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to echo your comments a moment ago. Larry Jackson again with Appalachian Power. The lowest cost in this case is not always going to be the way we want to go as a Commonwealth. Currently, the lowest cost reliable electricity is natural gas. And I believe that's not the direction we want to go. Also, with the issue of abandoning a project, if the situation changes in the world, we ought to evaluate whether or not to keep going with the project. We don't want to keep going just because we don't want to have to eat the cost. So we respectfully oppose this bill. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody online? There isn't anybody. That the bill is before you.
Yeah, there was a motion.
There was a motion to carry the bill over? Okay, we're going to have a conversation about the cure. We need, as a committee, we need to figure out what we're going to do, what bills we're going to put there. But the motion is to carry the bill over. And has that been seconded? Second. Okay. Senator Carol Foy, you want to close it out? Do you have anything?
Yes, I would just like to make mention that while Virginia does have some of the lowest rates, given the riders that we have, that's why we have some of the highest electricity bills in the country. Also, I want to make mention that when you have companies who make money off of projects, we want to make sure that they're making good managerial decisions and not looking towards the financing and construction costs that they will get money from, or whether or not a project is prudent or reasonable. And so that's what this bill does, is hopefully put the guardrails on, and I look forward to having the conversations.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, we've got the motions to carry the bill over. Unless there's a substitute motion, I'd ask you to open the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
The bill's carried over. Senator Carol Foy, you've got two more bills.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe Senate Bill 495, hydroelectricity generation facilities. And Mr. Chairman, before I begin with this bill, I have a line amendment. Could the clerk report the amendment?
It's a substitute, not a line amendment.
I move the substitute.
Okay, substitute.
Is it a line amendment or a substitute?
Okay, got a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye. The substitute's properly before the committee. Turn your attention to Senator Carol Foy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a bill to fix an omission in the Virginia Clean Economy Act. This is pretty much a cleanup bill. Many of Virginia's electric cooperatives purchase generation with the accompanying renewable energy certificates, RECs, from falling water hydroelectric facilities through the Southeastern Power Administration. In 2025, Carr Lake will no longer be in the renewable portfolio standard or eligible due to an inadvertent limit in the Virginia Clean Economy Act that was not intended to exclude in-state hydroelectric generation. So what this bill does is fix that omission, and I hope it is the will of the committee to report the bill.
Well, I've got a question. I don't know if staff can answer or, in 2022, I've had a bill to make sure the hydroelectric power plant in Bath County was treated as renewable. This is the same bill. Okay.
This is for dams.
But that was a dam too.
Kind of.
Pump storage project. That's. Senator Steph.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question to the patron. Senator, would you take it as a friendly amendment if, in addition to falling water generation facilities, we added nuclear facilities?
I do not believe that would be a friendly amendment. I think that would undermine the bill. The point of this bill is to encapsulate a location that was omitted inadvertently from the provisions of the VCEA. And so Carr Lake in South Side, Virginia, is operated by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's a dammed hydroelectric facility, meaning that's truly renewable and has no pump storage component. I think that's what's important to these co-ops.
Beyond that, Senator, I think that if you look at line 6 of the bill, that amendment wouldn't be germane to this bill. Are there other questions for Senator Carol Foy? Are there those that want to speak in favor of the bill or in opposition?
Those online who wish to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Sadie Gary on behalf of Virginia's Electric Cooperatives. Here in support of the bill. We are very grateful to the patron for carrying this bill for us to make this fix to ensure that Carr Lake is treated the same as Virginia's other true renewable hydroelectric facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Tom Dick on behalf of the Municipal Electric Power Association of Virginia, and we too are thankful for the patron for putting this in. Like our co-op friends, we've been getting power from SEPA since 1953, so we support the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we would like to thank the patron and the stakeholders for getting this bill into a position where the environmental community, speaking on behalf of Climate Cabinet Action and the Southern Environmental Law Center, can be neutral. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Those online who wish to speak in opposition, please raise your hand now.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Bill reports. 500.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Grid enhancing technologies. The issue here is that the demand for electricity is increasing. PJM, the entity which controls the Mid-Atlantic grid, projects Virginia's energy demand will sharply grow by approximately 5% annually over the next 15 years. We need a more resilient grid, and new energy sources face delays in coming online. And so what this bill does is that this hopeful legislation calls on utilities in Virginia to demonstrate that they have considered both grid-enhancing sensors and advanced reconductoring in their integrated resource planning. If applicable, utilities will also need to include a detailed explanation of why such technologies or conductors are not included in such plans before resorting to higher-cost grid upgrades that have the potential to increase costs for ratepayers. It is my ask that the committee reports this bill favorably.
So there's no substitute or amendments?
No.
Okay. I was looking at lines 161 through 166. How does that relate to the rest of the bill? It doesn't appear to be consistent totally with the preceding paragraph.
Yes, I would like to phone a friend, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, what we were trying to accomplish with this piece of legislation was to include GETS as a consideration both within the IRP plan and with the within the CPCN process, because the IRP planning only accounts for distribution planning, and we wanted to ensure that we were considering GETS within distribution and transmission planning at the state level. Advanced Energy United. Kim Jermaine.
Okay, I apologize. You get other questions for Senator Carol Foy. Are there people in the audience who want to be heard?
Those online who wish to
For or
speak
against?
in favor of this bill, please raise your hand now.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club, we support the bill.
Okay, we've got a hard stop at 5 o'clock, so let's...
Talk fast. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Kim Jermaine with Advanced Energy United. Advanced Energy United is a trade association that represents more than 100 companies that are powering the clean energy transition. We support this legislation because GETS are an underutilized tool in our toolbox to strengthen the grid. GETS are a suite of technologies that help us get the most out of our existing infrastructure. They can help grid operators identify points of congestion, adjust use according to real-time capacity, and reroute power when needed. In Kansas and Oklahoma, GETS helped unlock 40% additional capacity from existing infrastructure. Here in Virginia, that matters for 3 reasons. First, reliability. With real-time information, operators can react more quickly to extreme weather events or other moments of strain on the grid. Second, affordability. GETS can be installed in a fraction of the time and at a fraction of the cost as compared to new transmission, which is important to your constituents, the ratepayers. Lastly, capacity. Lastly, capacity. Unlocked capacity can help reduce interconnection delays and double the ability of the grid to absorb new projects. This is invaluable as we look ahead to the growing energy demand we know is coming over the next decade, and that Mr. Murray outlined in the reading of the PJM report. We thank the patron for carrying this legislation and hope you will support it.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Josephus Allman with the Southern Environmental Law Center. We support this bill for the ability to reduce the need of additional transmission projects to increase capacity on the grid as we're adding more renewables. So we would ask that you support the grid. Reduce transmission projects. Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Blair St. Ledger Olson with Climate Cabinet Action. Grid-enhancing technologies are a tech that have been used extensively across the globe very effectively to do more with less when it comes to energy transmission. So I hope it is the will of the body to support this bill. Thank you.
Thomas Turner, Conservatives for Clean Energy. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we support the bill for the reasons stated before you.
Ashish Kapoor from Piedmont Environmental Council, Chairman Deeds and committee, we support this for the aforementioned reasons. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Dana Wiggins with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. We look at this as having participated in the Grid Transformation and Security Act negotiations and all of that from 2018. We see this as giving consumers the biggest bang for their buck for anything that has already been existing infrastructure, using the best and the most that we can out of what we already have without having to build out new things first. Thank you.
Opposition?
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, Catherine Bond with Dominion Energy, and with all due respect to the patron, we do oppose the bill. Two primary points of concern. One is grid reliability and security. New digital technologies should be undertaken with caution. With those two things in mind, and I'll note that neither is mentioned in this bill. Secondly, it does set a new standard. To your question, Mr. Chair, before line 167, it sets a new standard for CPCN applications, and it purports that these technologies are sort of on a level playing field with infrastructure such as substations, for example. They just simply do not serve the same purpose. If I could just give you a transportation analogy. If we were talking about trying to relieve traffic congestion in the Hampton Roads area several years ago, and we were debating whether or not we needed additional lanes on 64 and we needed another tunnel or another bridge, this would be the equivalent of saying, well, if we better synchronize the stoplights on Atlantic Avenue in Virginia Beach, then maybe we wouldn't need those things. Not that any is bad, but they each have their own application. One is not a replacement or an alternative for the other. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else? Anybody online? Okay, what the bill's before the committee. What's your pleasure? The bill 500 does not have to go to finance. Why don't we do this? Why don't we take it back for the week? Okay, and I think Senator DeSteph wanted to. Did you vote on the prevailing side of that bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Everything was unanimous. I'm just going to talk to the patron offline afterwards. The first bill that we were looking at on 495 included both Bath County and Kerr. When we revised it, it took Bath County out. So your first bill had both hydroelectric plants. The final bill only had one of the hydroelectric plants. And I just wanted to kind of point that out. Maybe we should go back, figure out a way to add that in as well, if we're focused on hydroelectric plants. And again, I think you should take that as a friendly amendment. I think that'd be a good thing. But I'd like you to kind of discuss it with everyone. We have time to fix this as it goes up. I don't think your intent was to just do one of them. I think your intent was to do both, as I read your base bill.
Okay, so there's no motion on that bill then?
No, I think, Mr. Chairman, this can get fixed on the way up.
Okay, 500 will go by for the day, and we'll think about it. There's one more bill we can take up before we break, and that's 152.
Mr. Chairman, on 500, when we take a break, if we could have some more clarity maybe from staff of what these things are in, I guess, the advanced conductors on 91 and grid enhancing technologies on 95, if we could have some list of examples of what they are so we can understand it better.
Okay, Senate Bill 152 is Senator Suderline's bill. I've had email from him requesting that the bill be carried over to 2025. Okay, got a motion and a second to carry the bill over till next year. Senate Bill 152. Open the roll. Okay.
Ayes 15, no zero.
We will rise, and I'm 1 minute over my commitment.
You're a good man, Charlie.
Thank you, Greg.